That's 9 o'clock. Make sure you tune in. Welcome here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. Carlene Bragg is here. We want to get to our top story, a story that we broke here on Live Impact News yesterday afternoon, and that is the death of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. A 31-year-old was shot and killed during an event he was hosting at Utah Valley University. Now, the manhunt continues for the shooter. We just got a bit of new information before we got on the stream. So the FBI released a photo of a person of interest. It is seeking a connection to this fatal shooting again at Utah Valley University. And this Charlie Kirk's death is brought on a discussion and conversation from both sides of the aisle. I want to bring in Dr. Michael Bitzer, political science professor at Catawba College. Dr. Bitzer, as always, friend to the program, thank you for your time.
My pleasure.
Let's get into it. I just want to get your reaction to his death. It happened yesterday afternoon. I just want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I was actually wrapping up class yesterday afternoon when one of my students looked at his phone and announced that Charlie Kirk had been shot. We didn't know much at that particular point in time, but in thinking about and studying and actually teaching a course this semester on polarization in American politics, I think this is a very dangerous inflection point that we are at. We have seen political assassinations, typically tending to be of elected officials in our past history. We've seen political violence, but this kind of targeting of political activists now, a very well-known conservative political activist, is something that really stretches the mind to consider where we are as a nation and how we are going to get ourselves out of this very deep, very divisive, polarized environment that unfortunately can bring such events to bear to our collective nation. And I'm not real sure where we head from here. My hope is that we will find our better angels, but this is going to be a real test of the American civic will.
Yeah, Dr. Bitzer, I was just about to say and follow up with a question. You mentioned political violence. You talk about the assassination attempts against President Trump. Also, earlier this year, Melissa Horton, representative out of Minnesota, Governor Shapiro in Pennsylvania, and Charlie Kirk. Now, I believe I'm missing a couple of other violent acts. But what does this say about where we are within our political landscape?
I think it raises real concerns about the willingness of individuals to take violent terroristic attacks such as these that ultimately end in murder of an individual and to try and normalize it in some way. I think, we need to be shocked into what this tells us about American political and civic life. And that, in any other event, we would hope that the vast majority, if not all Americans, would repudiate and call this to account, that this kind of behavior simply is not based on American values in any way, shape, or form. But this continues to be part of our political landscape. So I'm afraid unless we have a real reckoning, and it is going to be us, we the people, that need to have this kind of political reckoning, we can expect more of these kinds of events, unfortunately. And where that leads us, I am very gravely concerned about.
And I do want to add, and I said I missed a couple, but Nancy Pelosi, also, her husband was attacked.
Her husband as well, yeah.
I do want to ask as well, President Trump blaming The left, we heard from Republican Representative Nancy Mace, also blaming Democrats. When you hear this type of rhetoric, how do we move forward from something like this and lower the temperature when you see this seemingly divisive politics at play?
Yeah, I think it's first and foremost incumbent upon our leaders to wait, to have a sense of moderation, to find out the facts behind such an event. The FBI is doing all that it can to bring this individual to justice. We will then have, more information, hopefully at that point in time, but to basically start blaming the other side of the political aisle is not responsible leadership of any way, shape, or form. And I think, if we want to indeed tap down the rhetoric, it is those individuals that spur the rhetoric, the heated rhetoric, that will need to be held accountable for their rhetoric by us, the people. But I'm afraid that we are in such a deeply polarized environment. What we know as political scientists is that negative partisanship is the dominant driver in our politics. And that means it's not so much I support my party, it's that I hate the other side. And when we use rhetoric to classify them as enemies, as almost unhuman, that raises the potential for these types of violence in our politics.
Dr. Bitzer, before I get you out of here, and I know it's early, I know the search is still on for the suspect, but when you talk about a guy like Charlie Kirk, he had a huge impact on President Trump being reelected and also elected. You first heard of him, at least I first heard of him back in 2016. What impact does this have looking ahead at 2026?
I'd be cautious to really try and make any kind of electoral politics prediction at this point. I think it's incumbent that we mourn the loss of a human being, that we hold up their family in our thoughts, and that we bring the suspect to justice. Certainly, this will have an impact. I don't know what that impact is going to be politically in 2026. We are a year out from the general campaign leading into November of 2026. We'll have a very competitive U.S. Senate race here in North Carolina. We'll potentially have a competitive U.S. House race in the northeastern part of the state. But as I've always kind of contended, 1 week to the next in American politics brings things that nobody knows about. And so we'll just have to kind of wait and see how this plays out and ultimately how the American people play this out. It is incumbent upon us to be able to reconcile these differences in ways that don't involve bullets, but rather the battle at the ballot box.
Well said, Dr. Bitzer. Hard to think about what happens politically when you have something tragic like this unfold, no matter what you believe in politically. Dr. Bitzer, thank you so much for your time and for the context and perspective, as always. We'll see you here shortly, I'm sure, here on the program.
Good to be with you.
All right, that is Dr. Michael Bitzer, again, give some context on what unfolded yesterday afternoon in Utah. All right, let's take a quick break here on Live Impact News. We'll be back in just 2 minutes. All right, welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. Carlene is here. We want to get now to a press conference that actually just wrapped up, but we want to play it from the beginning in case you missed it. So leaders in Raleigh holding a press conference there at the state capitol regarding legislation following the death of Irina Zarutska. That is the young woman who was fatally stabbed on the light rail, the Blue Line here in Charlotte. Back on August 22nd. There's been a lot of conversation surrounding her death since the video was released last Friday. Let's take you to that press conference in case you missed it.
Well, good morning. Thank you all for being here today with us. I'll start by acknowledging, of course, today being September 11th and, a tragic time in our country 24 years ago. And unfortunately, as we stand here today, another tragic time in our country with the murder of Charlie Kirk yesterday. And for us here in North Carolina, coming on the heels of a tragedy on the Charlotte transit system recently with the murder of the Ukrainian refugee who was on the train that night. And so over the course of the past really couple of weeks, we at the General Assembly have been thinking about what we can do to prevent the tragedy that happened in Charlotte from ever happening again in this state. And so we're still in the homework stage, finding out how this specific case happened. But from what we can tell so far, this was largely as a result of somebody being released from a jail who should not have been released from a jail. An individual who had a violent history, a convicted felon, had multiple charges, clearly had mental health issues, had multiple interactions with Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department, and somehow was allowed to walk out of the jail by a magistrate by simply signing a written promise to appear. Again, when all those facts were known, or certainly should have been known at the time. And so we've got to get to the bottom of how it happened in this case, and we're looking at a number of possible legislative actions to take, reforming various issues with our magistrates, with pretrial conditions of release, which we'll talk about more in just a moment. But I'll also say again, it's a solemn day for us. Many of the folks who work in this building actually knew Charlie Kirk, and a lot of the folks who, a lot of staff members, frankly, actually literally worked for him in the past, knew him personally, and so he was an incredible advocate for the conservative cause, and what we saw in Utah is really something that should never happen in this country. And it's the same thing for the Charlotte murder. That's not the kind of thing that should happen in this country, and especially cannot happen in North Carolina. So I can tell you that we at the General Assembly, we're going to take all action that we need to prevent those things in the future. So I'm going to turn this over now to Chairman Whatley, and I'll come back up in a moment and answer some questions about our proposed legislation.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we think about Charlie Kirk and his loss, which was just yesterday, what comes to my mind was a quote from 2 Timothy 4:7. I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, I have kept the faith, and in Charlie's case, that was certainly true. And so, yes, this is a tough day because of what happened 24 years ago, because of what happened in North Carolina in the last several weeks, and because of what happened 24 hours ago in Utah. This is the kind of conversation that we should not have to have in this country or here in North Carolina. But having this tough conversation and speaking these hard truths is the perfect way to honor the legacy of someone like Charlie, so we will. Families are hurting right now because of this series of attacks. And as we speak these hard truths, we must be clear about the cause, the rhetoric and soft-on-crime policies of the left. Let's take the rhetoric first. President Trump was spot on about what leads to a culture like this one. When folks on the left seek to dehumanize those they disagree with, they use words like fascist and Nazi, and they call for violence. That's what leads to deranged people doing cowardly and evil acts. The most fundamental obligation and responsibility of any government is keeping its citizens safe. We need leaders at every level to acknowledge that there is a crime crisis here in North Carolina and across the country brought about by the left's soft-on-crime policies, which affect the safety of every community and every family across our great state. Roy Cooper has a history of being soft on crime. He let 3,500 criminals free. And the killer who killed young Arena, he was released just 3 months after one of Cooper's soft on crime executive orders in 2020 and 13 additional times after he was arrested. DeCarlos Brown Jr. is a career criminal who was arrested 14 times when Cooper was governor and when he was our state's top law enforcement officer as Attorney General. What has transpired over these days and weeks is becoming a clear attack on our next generation. One high-profile victim and one making her own way in America, both killed in the prime of their lives because of the rhetoric, one because of soft crime on policies. The left loves to say the thoughts and prayers aren't enough. So let me call them to action. It's time for leaders in their party to call out the hateful rhetoric that is leading to this violence. And it is time for them to take a look in the mirror and realize their soft-on-crime policies are killing our young people, our future, and destroying families. Our elected officials must rescind the Cooper policies which allowed attacks like that on Arena, and ensure that this and any criminal feels the wrath of justice and is not allowed to walk the streets free again. I am here to offer my support to these men, to the legislative leadership who is committing to do that today. I'm here to encourage them. Don't back down. Don't relent. Don't be deterred by the hate. It's time to take our country back and dismantle the radical left machine which puts us in this position. And it's time to do it today. That's how we will honor the memory of these young people. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Chairman Watley. Irina Zarutska should still be alive today. But her life was tragically cut short because of the atrocious policies pushed by out-of-touch politicians and court officials that prioritize a perverted vision or version of equity and politicized social justice over real and tangible justice. The hardworking men and women in law enforcement go after and catch violent criminals. But all too often, as soon as the criminals are brought before a magistrate or a judge, their efforts to keep our communities safe go down the drain. We cannot stand by while our cities are held hostage by soft-on-crime policies. We must stop the ongoing violence from overtaking our state and our country. Yesterday's assassination of Charlie Kirk is the latest in a string of political violence that also calls us to act. Last year, there were horrific assassination attempts carried out on President Trump. Earlier this summer, there was an assassination of former Minnesota House Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband, and the shooting of Minnesota Senator John Hoffman and his wife. We must take crime and violence seriously, and our law and legal processes must reflect that seriousness. That means we will fight back against soft-on-crime policies that permeate our judicial system. When the General Assembly returns on September the 22nd, we're going to propose a package of common sense policies to more effectively tackle crime in our state. We can start by ensuring that Governor Stein and other members of the executive branch cannot establish any future task forces like the one Roy Cooper created that advanced weak-on-crime policies that kept Irina's murderer on the streets. We cannot keep our citizens safe if our policies favor criminals over public safety. I personally am looking into ways to restart the death penalty here in North Carolina. For far too long, there's been a judicially imposed moratorium on the death penalty by activist judges and doctors and attorneys general and governors who are more interested in serving leftist political bosses than justice for victims and their families, and justice for the public as well. Republicans in the General Assembly have attempted to restart the death penalty over the past decade and a half, but those efforts have been stymied at every turn. Here's the thing, policing doesn't need to be reimagined. It needs to be respected, it needs to be funded. Our hard-working law enforcement officers are all too often villainized just for doing their jobs, keeping us safe, and it's time for that to end. If we do not respect those who keep us safe and run towards danger, then we will descend into chaos. Now is not the time to sit back and hope for the best. We need to take bold, decisive action. President Trump's vision to create a safer America is something we can replicate here in North Carolina. I support the President's actions to keep American citizens safe and commend his leadership in that regard. We need to lock up violent thugs who are terrorizing our citizens. We need to go after drug traffickers who are poisoning our children. We need to keep repeat offenders in jail. We need to end cashless bond. We need to hold, or cashless bail, we need to hold activist judges and magistrates accountable. We must deliver justice for Irina and the countless families across our state that have fallen victim to a justice system that does not support them and does not keep them safe. And the bill we will bring forward later this month will play a vital role in that, but it's just a first step. Even though it's Speaker Hall and me here at the podium today, we've been working with our judiciary chairs. I want to call out specifically Senator Overcash and other members of our caucuses, and of course our House colleagues, to determine specifics for this package in order to address the very real issue of violence occurring in our state. And now I'll turn it over to Speaker Hall. Excuse me.
And I'll also touch on a few of the specifics that we're looking at as well, along with, as Senator Berger mentioned, ending cashless bail in this state. You know, what happened in this situation was an individual who could have been given a secured bond, meaning they would have had to have paid some amount of money in order, or get a bond to get out of jail. And this person, instead of being required to do that, was allowed to sign a piece of paper and walk out of that jail. And again, we're talking about an individual who had a prior violent felony conviction, who had served time in prison, who had been charged at least 13 times before that latest charge when he was allowed to walk out, an individual who obviously had some form of mental health issues, again, allowed to walk out of that jail. So when folks come in and before a magistrate and they've been charged with a serious crime, if they're they have a prior violent felony on their record, it simply should not even be an option to allow that person to have some sort of cashless bail. They should be held in the jail under a secured bond, and if that had happened here, then most likely the victim in Charlotte would still be alive today. We've also got to look at the way that we handle magistrates in this state. You know, Charlotte has had a problem, Mecklenburg County has had a problem with its magistrates for a long time now. And I'll remind most of you all that we had a bipartisan bill that I worked on personally dealing with pretrial integrity, called it the Pretrial Integrity Act. And it basically said if you're out already you've got a charge already and you're out on bail and you get charged again, we're going to make it much more difficult for you to get out pre-trial. And, you know, we worked with the Mecklenburg County DA, we worked with city leaders in Charlotte, worked with the chief of CMPD on that bill, and they agreed with that. And we were able to get that bill done. But it obviously was not enough. And so when we have magistrates who were asleep at the wheel, like this one obviously was, we've got to make a change. And so we're going to be looking at some oversight of magistrates, looking at the way that we select magistrates, looking at ethical issues with magistrates, and making sure that the folks who are making these decisions are paying attention to what they're doing and that they're trying to serve the public safety and not some whatever left-wing interest or whatever other interest they have other than public safety. That's what a magistrate should be doing. So we're going to look very closely at that. We're also going to look at dealing with issues when folks are charged with crimes who have obvious mental health issues, making sure that magistrates are taking that into consideration. You know, in jails, we expanded Medicaid in this state, and one of the justifications for that we heard from sheriffs was we have folks in the jails who need mental health care, or they need health care in general. And so we have options available under current law for these folks who are in jails to have some of that treatment. In fact, you know, we're told that CMPD apparently interacted with this guy 4 times in the prior year on well checks, and that he was offered services. It's not been clear what services this person was actually offered. We've not been given answers to those questions. We'll find out, and we'll get to the bottom of exactly what was going on there. But we're going to increase training for magistrates and make sure that they understand that their role, again, is to keep the public safe. The other thing that I think it's critical that we look into is the budget in Mecklenburg County and Charlotte, and to see where are they spending money at where they maybe shouldn't be. I've seen some reports about some grants that they receive from groups that their purpose is to keep people out of jail, or they're opposed to requiring cash bail. We're going to look at some of those grants and see if maybe that played a role in this case in Mecklenburg County. And again, we're going to go through the entire budget for the city of Charlotte and Mecklenburg County to see where these funds are going. Because ultimately, we're dealing with a local government, really Mecklenburg County and city of Charlotte, 2 local governments that, in my opinion, have lost institutional control of their areas. You have a sheriff in Mecklenburg County who refuses to cooperate with ICE. You have a sheriff in Mecklenburg County who, I saw a report, blamed the community for the heinous murder that happened in Mecklenburg County. He was not willing to take any of the blame whatsoever, and made very clear that was, in his opinion, the community's fault. You have, unfortunately, in CMPD, a refusal to give the officers body armor to wear while on duty, despite multiple officers being killed in recent years. And so we have to put a stop to the soft on crime policies. When you're dealing with violent offenders like the Carlos Brown, if you don't take action, and the folks on the ground are the ones who have to take the action, if they don't do it, we're going to continue to have this sort of thing. You know, Mecklenburg County has over 100 murders a year now. And, you know, their crime rate may not be as bad as Chicago, but we don't want to compare ourselves to Chicago. In North Carolina, it simply should never be the case to have over 100 murders a year in a North Carolina city. And so we're going to do all we can at this level to make sure that the folks, not only in Mecklenburg County and Charlotte, but every county across the state, that they're doing all they can to keep the public safe. Because the thing that really keeps me up at night right now is to know, we know this individual's story now because it's finally being publicized, but how many more folks like this are walking the streets right now in uptown Charlotte? How many of them are here in Raleigh or in Greensboro or Winston or any town across the state? How many others just like that are out walking around right now? And, you know, how do we know one of our loved ones is not going to come into the path of one of those individuals? So it's, again, a sad time here in this state in particular with the things.
All right, so right there you're watching a press conference from North Carolina GOP leaders talking about legislation for Irina Zaruska, the young woman that was fatally stabbed on the light rail last month. Again, a lot of conversation since that video has been released last week. We'll get back to that press conference in just a moment, but we need to take a break. We'll take a break. We'll be back here in 2 minutes on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. We want to get back to that press conference that we were showing you earlier with North Carolina GOP leaders discussing legislation following the death of Irina Zarutska. She's the woman that was fatally stabbed on the light rail here in Charlotte back on August 22nd. Let's go back now to that press conference.
Nationally and the things that we've seen after this Charlotte murder. But I can tell you, my colleagues in the General Assembly, both the House and the Senate, are committed to fixing the issue. In particular, Tricia Cotham, who, as a member of my caucus, who represents part of Mecklenburg County that sits very close to home for Representative Cotham, and she's dealt with a lot of threats to her personally after she changed parties, and so she knows well how important and critical it is that you have law enforcement officers who are focused on the safety of their community. And so she's working very closely with us on this and with the local partners there in Charlotte to get the issue fixed. So I think we'll open it up for questions now for folks, and just let us know who you want to ask to. Brian, go ahead.
First, my condolences on Charlie Kirk there. I'm sorry for those collective loss there. I wanted to ask Chairman Whatley or Senator Berger about the task force that Cooper had assembled in 2020, I believe. My understanding is, you create a task force. That task force makes recommendations, but the legislature here in the General Assembly is obviously the policy-making body. What specific policies did then Governor Cooper and Stein, who's on that task force, actually enact that you think contributed to what happened in Charlotte?
So I don't know that I can go through a litany of the things that were recommended, but my understanding is that task force recommendations are still posted on the internet, unless they were taken down last night. And there are a number of things that just indicate a real willingness to pay more attention to the concerns of the perpetrators than the real concerns of the victims. And we can go ahead and get you copies of those, and but my understanding is it's still up on the internet.
I guess the question would be, those are recommendations, but what policies have been enacted on.
But what they do is they reflect an attitude on policing, on an attitude on criminal justice, an attitude on how things ought to be taking place, and those attitudes, in many respects, are the things that inform the kinds of decisions that were made by the magistrate in this case and by other magistrates that are of the same political ilk.
And I will just add that I have had conversations with chiefs of police, with sheriffs, with law enforcement officers all across North Carolina. And the one thing that they continue to come back to is that when we're talking about the safety of community, leadership matters. And that they feel it is absolutely critical for leadership at the top to be able to support our law enforcement community, to be able to make sure they're out there. You know, when we talk about DeCarlos Brown Jr. being arrested 14 times, that's a threat to every police officer that had to have an interaction with him beyond the first one. And so when we talk about having really truly public officials who are fighting harder every single day for the criminals and their rights than for the victims, that is the problem that we really truly want to address here.
Speaker Hall, you mentioned the overview of magistrates. Wasn't it an issue in this particular case, but would you support legislation that would mandate all magistrates have a law degree?
Well, that's something that that we're looking at as well. Some states do require that. You know, right now, the way our law is set up, magistrates have quite a bit of discretion, and you know, there's a process that they go through with the clerk and the resident senior superior court judge to appoint them. But they have a lot of discretion in given cases, and in the past in this state, that's worked, but it's clearly not working anymore. And as Senator Berger said, I think it's this sort of the general idea that when you hear from the governor's office that we're recommending, this task force recommends a cashless bail system, and you have magistrates who have a lot of discretion in the cases they're dealing with, you can see how in some areas where those magistrates may begin to believe, well, we ought to move towards more of that sort of system, and they have the discretion to let somebody out on a written promise to appear. Again, as I mentioned earlier, I also have some concerns with some of the nonprofit groups who have reportedly been giving funds to Mecklenburg County or the Sheriff's Office, whatever the case may be. Many of those groups have one of their stated goals being ending cash bail or otherwise, you know, keeping people out of the jail instead of in jail waiting for trial. And so, you know, ultimately, no matter if you have somebody there with a law degree or not, if there's wide discretion in a given case, you're going to have circumstances where mistakes maybe are made. And so that's why we're looking closer at some mandates on folks who have violent felony convictions, like the individual in this case, saying in those cases that a written promise or a cashless bail is just simply not an option. The other thing that our law currently does, in certain cases, it requires an actual judge. So a district court judge in most cases requires them to make the decision on pretrial conditions of release. That's the case often in domestic violence cases. And so that's another possibility that we may look at in serious cases, simply taking that out of the hands of magistrates and saying that that decision has to be made by a district court judge or a superior court judge. At least they have some accountability to the voters, where magistrates simply don't. So there's all options are on the table. There are a lot of tweaks that we can make to our current system that would largely prevent this sort of thing from happening again. And look, I'm hopeful we'll have a bipartisan solution on that. We did in the past the Pretrial Integrity Act, but you know, I can just tell you we're going to do all we can in this upcoming legislation. You know, we'll be back here in a couple of weeks, and so not a quick turnaround to be able to get all that together. And this is going to be an ongoing issue, but we're trying to strike to the heart of the problem and make sure this doesn't happen again.
Yeah, if I could follow up on that, you know, I think if the focus is on credentials, I think we're missing what the real problem there is, and the real problem there is the attitude that results in the kind of discretion that gets utilized. And so what I think we need to do is reduce the ability of some magistrates to have that broad discretion that they currently have, and make sure that we get a little more consistency in terms of the decisions that get made. You shouldn't have to have that sort of thing. You would hope that people that have good, solid, common sense judgment are occupying those positions, regardless of whether they have a law degree or any other credential. Excuse me.
Are there specific measures that you're looking at so I know the bill's not out yet. We've just had, two really high-profile public violence. If there's something that addresses both the security of the light rail, not just the person charged, and then with the Charlie Kirk assassination, just these general public spaces and people having these fears of violence, and what security measures are there, or why would any new laws be needed for just the broader rest of us?
Yeah. So. I know I've had some conversations with folks in Charlotte, and I know the speaker is as well, and I'm pretty sure that Michael has. One of the problems is he would not have been on the light rail if they had been enforcing the requirement that you have to pay a fare. So those are the sorts of things that I'm hopeful that the folks in Charlotte will start to address in a meaningful way, and the conversations I've had lead me to believe that they are at least having those conversations. So there are a lot of those sorts of things. I don't know. We're going to look at everything, whether or not the package that we come up with will actually specifically address that sort of thing or not. In that way, I just couldn't say. And then as far as public spaces and places where people are having events, I think in some respects our ability to legislate specific rules about that kind of thing are severely limited. I like to tell folks that in many respects legislation is a very blunt instrument at times. I think people need to be aware of the need to have security available, and our local law enforcement obviously needs to be consulted whenever anybody is planning to have an event that draws a sizable crowd.
Are either of you concerned about your own safety and of other, political figures when you're in spaces, outside this building?
So I'll speak to that. We have a great group here, the General Assembly Police, who work close with, for every member, their local law enforcement officials, and they monitor things that come in. And so, we take those things seriously, and we do that really in a bipartisan way. I think Representative Reeves would tell you that we've communicated with him in the past on issues that have come up, and we don't let any partisanship get in the way of safety. And so, the other thing that I think it's critical that we look at in this state in particular is our involuntary commitment rules. Nationally, over the course of probably the last 20, 30, 40 years, there's been more of a movement to people not being in mental health hospitals. And so it's become the case that today in most states, it's extremely difficult to have someone involuntarily committed. So we need to take a close look at that and what we need to do to make sure that folks who don't need to be out on the street, who need to be in a hospital somewhere, that can happen. And so that's a longer-term conversation. There might be some low-hanging fruit there that we can go ahead and do. But ultimately, I look at my role as Speaker. I have some duty to do what I can to protect the safety of all the members of the House. And whether that's Republican or Democrat, when any sort of perceived threat comes in, we act quickly. Give them all the resources that they need, but fundamentally, it's a sad day in this country when we're dealing with issues like that, where you have to worry about that sort of thing and what we saw yesterday. And it's a different country today than it was, frankly, yesterday. And it's coming on the right here on the anniversary of September the 11th, and it's not clear what this will mean for this country and this state. But what I know is it's going to take really folks on both sides and leaders on both sides stepping forth, and simply repudiating any sort of political violence whatsoever. That's not the way that we handle disputes in this country. We handle disputes through our words and at the ballot box. And so anything that we need to do to keep people safe, we're going to do.
We need a final question. I know Gary's been waiting.
Thank you. Have there been conversations with Governor Steiner or his administration about this particular package, or will there be? Do you have hope that you can work out something that can get some bipartisan support?
So I'll speak to that because I spoke to Governor Stein for a while yesterday, and Senator Berger and I met with him briefly this morning. The short answer is yes. I'm hopeful that we can reach some sort of bipartisan solution. I hope that the politics of it don't get in the way of us being able to put something into law, statewide anyway. If it does, maybe we look at the local bill route to deal with some of the problem counties in the state where we don't have to worry about a veto. But, our goal right now is to have a bipartisan solution. There's precedent for that, again, on the Pretrial Integrity Act. And so I don't know for sure yet what the specifics will be and where the governor may disagree on those things. But we know we need to act quickly, and I think anyone would understand that, including the governor. And so my hope is that we'll be able to get something done with him.
I'm sorry, just follow up. The discussion yesterday and this morning included this.
Yesterday, for sure, yeah. He and I had a lengthy discussion with him yesterday on a number of these things, and so I'll let Senator Berger speak to the rest as to his discussions.
Yeah, so we did meet with the governor this morning. This was not a topic of that meeting, and I have not had any specific conversations with him about the legislation because, at this point, we've made a commitment within the last day or so that we're going to come forward with something on the week of the 22nd. We don't have the specifics. We're accepting suggestions from all members and folks in the executive branch as well.
Really quick, you guys mentioned the death penalty and getting that reinstated. And how do you guys plan to approach that differently this time so that that actually happens? And secondly, as we're talking about the political blame for a lot of this violence that has been going on, President Trump has frozen billions of dollars in federal grants for law enforcement this year. Does that concern you?
Yeah, so we've not settled on exactly what is going to be in the package. As I indicated in my remarks, that is one of the subjects that I'm interested in us moving forward with. With reference to the federal grants, I don't think this is a money problem at this point, or at least many of the problems that we have that we've identified have more to do with judgment being inappropriately exercised, and I don't know that any amount of money will solve that, but some policies we can come forward with should.
For this tough on crime bill, is there any room for any provisions related to guns, potentially gun control?
So, the murderer in Charlotte killed this young lady with a knife. And so a gun had nothing to do with it. Again, it's a problem of local officials being soft on crime. A magistrate allowing this person out. It's not a resources issue for law enforcement. This person was arrested 13, 14 times before this. It was not a law enforcement problem. It was a problem of the magistrate, a problem of the judicial system who let this person out at the end of the day.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so you're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. That is the press conference from North Carolina lawmakers from the GOP announcing legislation, or discussing legislation following the death of Irina Zarutska, the young woman that was fatally stabbed on the light rail. Again, this is a story that has brought up a lot of conversation on different fronts when it comes to public safety, when it comes to safety on transit, and all different things that has sparked conversation not only here locally, but across the nation. Our Jessie Pierre is following the story for us as far as the fatal stabbing, and she'll have a live report at 4 and 6 o'clock this evening. We want to take a quick break here on Live Impact News. We'll be back here in 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. Carlene's here. Jeb is here in studio. So we are continuing our coverage of that fatal stabbing on the light rail back on August 22nd. A lot of, as I mentioned earlier, and I've been mentioning it all week, a lot of conversation, not just locally and not just across the state, but across the country regarding this death in different areas. So RJ Monreal actually got a chance to speak with a Ukrainian psychologist and trauma expert to talk regarding the stabbing. So here's that full interview in case, because we played it this morning at 9. We didn't get to play it in its entirety, but in case you missed it, let's play it for you.
You fled Ukraine how long ago? And just tell me your story of what happened in your circumstances.
I lived in my country. I was so popular TV presenter, and at 4 o'clock at the morning, in one day, I felt bombing my country, and very quickly I get up with my children, and I lived all this time in Germany. And I know always refugee. It's not easy way. It's not easy for mother, and it's not easy for Ukrainian.
Yeah, I know. Tell me about the trauma you experienced, and what did you? How did you react when you learned of Irina's death here in Charlotte?
I didn't know about this story, and maybe only 3 hours ago, and I read what happened, and I'm shocked because for me it's a young, beautiful woman who don't make something bad for anybody, and she went so far for be alive, and for me, it's about which high price we need to pay just for be alive. And I hope I try to find some idea why it's happened for us. And I think she's Angel who again said to this world about Ukrainian, about our situation, that you are never safe. We had our house, we had our life. We never, who lived in Ukraine before war, we wanted to live at our country. We don't need any documents for another countries. We don't need any money for our life. We want to be at our country. And if people, refugee, they was needed to change their place where they lived. And it's so sad for me because I understood how many women now think again about dangerous, about their daughters who are 20 years old, about their own life. And for me, it's so terrible. I'm shocked.
You know, it is a shock for people who don't even have your history. You know, we only are watching from the outside. And as a Ukrainian, a refugee, hearing this random act of violence, how does that feel for the community and women in Ukraine and those who have left Ukraine and escaped such, you know, horror in your own country? How does that feel?
You know, everybody now discuss about that we are we can find place where we are safe, and I don't know why they kill her. They don't have any situation for it. Why it's Ukrainian girl in this train and so young and so beauty and you know, I think everybody think now about how dangerous life we have involved. It's not only about Ukrainian story, it's about everybody who had not gun or knife.
So, as a witness to what happened to her, that happened here in the States, and does that compound the trauma for you or for what your experience was?
I'm sure for all women who are refugee now, it's make their trauma more deep, because you're feeling that you are never safe and your children never safe. And you know, it's not I know a lot of stories, the same stories, and somebody killed Ukrainian young guys in Germany just because they was Ukrainian with Ukrainian flag, and why you come to our country and go out. It's a lot of stories, believe me. It's terrible when you have so difficult last 10 years, 5 years, 3 years, because somebody came from Ukraine when war started on another part of Ukraine, on Donbass, and somebody came to another countries now, started be refugee now, and I think everybody will think now about if it's be safe to be Ukrainian, you know?
I mean, and that's exactly it. How does that path to obviously resilience and feeling safe again and seeking refuge, how does Ukrainians or any refugee find that feeling again?
I think we need see how big support we have from American people, because I know that a lot of people make charity account for family of this girl, and we have big support from every countries who took refugees from Ukraine, and we need to think about it too, because I want to say thank you everybody who support my nationality in this situation. And I think, you know, my opinion that in this terrible situation, I think only about one thing, that she's angel who again called to hurt everybody, to say that we have so big problem now and we don't touch anybody. Ukrainian never in history touch any countries with war, never started it. Never, never, never.
How can we here in Charlotte help the community heal?
I think it's can be just different kind of support when you write something in your social media, because I'm so famous person, and every time people ask me, maybe we are not interested for world, maybe we are not important for world, and I all time said that people support us. Think about it. A lot of people support Ukraine all this time, and every kind of support, every situation when you can say it, yes, think about better future. We are with you. I think our future bigger than our problems and our trauma, because now we have a lot of problem, but we are so popular country in world, and it's very important for future all my country and for my cultural.
What do you want to say to Irina's family? Her mom has been here, and the family speaking out in support of Irina and that she loved America. What do you want to say, from one Ukrainian to another family who've experienced this? What do you want to say to her family?
I want to say that I know that this pain is for all life, but every pain it's material for biggest thing, when you need to say more about your situation for supporting other families and other people. And if you have not any connection with person which you lost, you need produce something for another people who can remember about this person. And it's great work. It's very good for future. And for example, you can just make something small, but I don't know, T-shirt with name Irina, and this T-shirt you can sell for charity. I think we need to make something bigger. If we lost some person and in big tragedy, this death need to work for another lives.
Death needs to work for another life.
Yes.
Okay. Dr. Natalia Kolodenko, appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right, so that was our interview there with a Ukrainian psychologist and trauma expert, really providing some context on ways to help following, again, that tragic stabbing back on August 22nd. All right, let's take a quick break. We're going to take a break. We're going to take a timeout. We'll be back in 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. Carlene's here. Jeb is here. And folks, it is another beautiful day outside.
That's nice.
A little warmer. Each day
It's a
gets
little
warmer
warmer.
and warmer outside.
Yeah.
I'm not mad at that.
I'm not mad at it at all.
I took a quick walk to my car. It kind of made it like a little lap. And I was like, this is nice.
This
It was
is
a little
nice.
warm though. I mean, it was a little warmer than I'm used to this week because
Yeah.
it was fall-esque outside. but,
Yeah.
yeah. So and then let me look into my crystal ball.
Okay.
I think
Okay.
we're going to get high 80s sometime soon.
You think or do you know?
I think I can't.
Okay.
The numbers they keep flipping. So
It's blurry. It's
so
blurry.
It's a little blurry.
Got it.
So you might have a chance, another shot, one more shot at the pool before.
One
it's-
more shot.
before you have to wrap it up and put your sweater on.
Not with that attitude. I can jump in the pool.
Well, instead of me looking into my crystal ball
Yeah.
at the forecast, let's check in with
The
Becca,
professionals.
Professionals. Becca Birdsall with your full forecast.
Good Thursday. I'm meteorologist Becca Birdsall, and it was another cool, crisp start to the day. Many of us woke up into the 50s, even a lower to middle 40s up towards the high country. But that 59 degrees you saw here in Charlotte, that actually marked the 5th consecutive day where we've had these low temperatures in the 50s, below 60 degrees to be exact. And we'll remain in that range in the upper 50s to lower 60s as we go towards this upcoming weekend as well. Our stat of the day, well, our average low for now is 64 degrees, and that average low will continue to drop about 1 degree every 2 to 3 days. This will continue all the way through about October, 17th. Weather impacts today, temperatures will be a little bit more seasonal, back to near average, close to about 84 degrees. You still won't need that umbrella, just the sunglasses for this afternoon, with temperatures really starting to warm up for the second half of the weekend. Yesterday, we had a high temperature of 82 degrees with a morning low of 56. Today will be just a little bit a touch warmer with those high temperatures, mainly in the middle 80s for today, with dry conditions and lots of sunshine to go around. We do have that surface high pressure system keeping things quiet here, which is why we'll continue to see those warming temperatures, lower to middle 80s across the greater Charlotte area and lower 70s for the high country. Those dew points starting to rise just a hair, mainly into the lower to middle 60s, so not necessarily uncomfortable, but not as comfortable as it has been over this past week. We will continue to see cooler, drier air as we end out the work week. Part of the reason why is we're in a blocking pattern in the upper levels of the atmosphere. So it's called an omega block. You can actually see that Greek omega shape in the jet stream. And right now it's driving in those northerly winds, some of that cooler, drier air across the Carolinas. But where you see that high pressure system, that's actually where the heat is really cranking up, especially between Oklahoma and Texas. High temperatures over there, lower to middle 90s. We will start to feel a little bit of that heat going into the second half of the weekend with a gradual warming trend. Lots of sunshine to go around, but for your Saturday, middle 80s start to creep up to around 86, which is above average. The mix of sunshine and clouds to go around. That warming trend will continue into your Monday. Highs breaking into the upper 80s, even a few locations brushing 90, especially in our most southern counties. A cold front will be coming through. That will knock temperatures back down into the lower 80s between Tuesday and Wednesday before another big warm up as we end out the work week. Of course, September is a transition month, so this up and down temperature trend will only continue as we go further in the month. Rain chances slim to none from now into Monday. Like I mentioned, next cold front starts to come through. We'll reintroduce those rain chances, only about an isolated chance as we go into that work week. Checking in on the tropics, of course, we are at the peak of hurricane season, and the National Hurricane Center is watching this tropical wave coming off the coast of Africa that now has about a 30% chance of tropical cyclone development as it continues to push westward in the open, warm waters of the Atlantic. Something to watch as we go into the next 7 days, but the system's still over 3,000 miles away from the United States. So as we continue to monitor this, keep up to date with the forecast. But of course, course, this is peak of hurricane season. This is typically when we see less wind shear. Instability levels will also continue to increase through late September. And of course, we've got some warm ocean waters over there as well. Closer to home, temperatures tonight dropping down into the upper 50s to lower 60s in this Jerry Hunt Supercenter 7-day forecast. For your Friday, we'll be kick-starting this weekend off with gorgeous weather, lots of sun, highs lower to middle 80s. Again, that warming trend really cranking up for your Sunday and Monday, highs middle to upper 80s. Cold front will come through on Tuesday and Wednesday.
All right, Carlene, Monday looks like the day to hop into the pool.
You know what? I'm off on Monday too.
There you go. See, perfect.
So my behind will be in the pool.
I told you,
Thank you.
my crystal ball works in mysterious
You know what?
ways.
It does work.
So yeah. All right, that was a check of your full forecast. All right, so we want to get to something live happening right now in Hartford, Connecticut. Governor Ned Lamont is holding a news conference to discuss executive actions his administration is taking to safeguard the ability of residents in Connecticut to access vaccines. Let's take a listen in to what officials are saying at this moment.
Present newer recommendations from the leadership of Washington, D.C. are misguided, do not align with the scientific data, and will likely result in a very significant excess number of severe diseases, hospitalizations, and deaths. I thank Governor Lamont and the Department of Public Health for their initiative to assure that the COVID-19 vaccine is available, and just as important, that is also covered by the insurance carriers for all of our Connecticut residents. Thank you very much, Governor.
Oh, yeah, please.
En español. Para la mitad de diciembre del 2020, los Estados Unidos había acumulado 350,000 personas que habían muerto debido al COVID-19. Esta pandemia ha matado más de 1 millón de pacientes en los Estados Unidos. Las primeras dosis de la vacuna se dieron en diciembre 14 del 2020, hace ya más de 5 años. Ese invierno se estima que se salvaron alrededor de 3 millones de vidas. También se evitaron 18 millones de hospitalizaciones y posiblemente se salvó por lo menos $1 trillón en cuidado médico. Y esto se debe a que el 80% de nuestra población se vacunó. Esta vacuna se ha probado ser efectiva y segura por el tiempo y por la ciencia. Las recomendaciones que han salido de Washington, D.C. no están siguiendo la ciencia y no están siguiendo la data que tenemos. Y podrían resultar en una cantidad bien excesiva de muertes, hospitalizaciones y enfermedad bien severa. Le doy las gracias al gobernador Lamont y al Departamento de Salud Pública que han permitido que esta vacuna que esté disponible para todas las personas que la necesiten y que sea available, que sea disponible para todas las personas, no importa el costo de ella. Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much. And now we'll hear from our Insurance Commissioner, Andy Mays.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. And I do want to start off by thanking both Governor Lamont and Lieutenant Governor Weissowitz for their leadership on this issue that has been critical as we work, as you can see, across state agencies to help ensure that Connecticut will do all that it can to protect access to health care, because vaccines are health care for all its residents. It's really important to me on a personal level. I've got a 95-year-old mother, I've got a granddaughter who's almost 2, and I've got a daughter who's in her 3rd trimester. COVID vaccines work. We know that. That is why we are here. That is why the governor and the lieutenant governor are here to try to make sure that nobody has to go without vaccines. We've all been through COVID. We've heard the numbers. We know what happened in COVID. We know how vital it is for people to have the access to the COVID vaccines. And certainly as part of our role here at the Connecticut Insurance Department, we issued a bulletin yesterday. If you don't have access to it, it's HC133. We're insurance people, we love numbers, but it is available on our website. And what that does is that bulletin affirms that DPH's interim COVID-19 immunization guidance does align with existing state law requiring immunization coverage in Connecticut-issued health insurance practice. And this, as we all know, is consistent with the professional bodies, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Academy of Family Physicians, and the American Academy of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. And for that, coverage is mandated by state law. Now, we know that many of our residents are concerned over the uncertainty. I will tell you, we at the insurance department have remained in close and constant communication with the health insurers who are fully insured group and individual plans in our state. Now, carriers, as you know, provide coverage for all the ACIP recommended vaccines. The good news is the insurers tell us there will be no change in coverage and cost sharing for 2026, not just 2025, for 2026 plan years for COVID-19 vaccine, even if the CDC advisory panel should change their recommendation, so long as the professional groups continue to recommend it. And that covers those in Connecticut who are covered by fully insured plans. Members of fully insured plans do not currently have any cost sharing. As with all coverage decisions, self-funded plans, the ERISA plans, those are subject to what the employers decide. However, I will tell you, based on the feedback that we've gotten, most employers will continue to provide coverage. Again, vaccines save lives, vaccines save money, and vaccines reduce the burden on our healthcare system. Vaccines, getting vaccinated, keeps us all healthy. Now, just for those of you, for those who may have insurance through the exchange, I do want to reassure you that the rates that were just approved presumed that all the vaccinations will continue through 2026, which is why I can tell you there will be no change in coverage. Now, we have authority over roughly 25% of the fully insured, the insured people in Connecticut, as I mentioned. Those who are basically the large employers, those who are self-funded, they are under the Department of Labor, and we expect them to do the right thing. Now, what I will say for those of you who may have questions, please reach out to us. Our email is insurance@ct.gov, or you can call us, and I can never remember the phone number, but it is 800-203-3447. We are here to help, and we are grateful for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And our final commissioner who will speak today is our Commissioner of Consumer Protection, Brian Caffarelli. Commissioner.
Thank you. Well, I think what we've heard here this afternoon is that Governor Lamont, Lieutenant Governor Bysewicz, and the administration are continuing to provide steady leadership and clarity on this issue. The public has developed an expectation of access to safe and effective vaccines at their pharmacies. And the Department of Consumer Protection regulates the over 6,500 licensed pharmacists and nearly 700 pharmacies across the state. And our guidance that was issued on September 10th allows that to continue. So thank you, Governor Lamont, for gathering us here today, and to the Insurance Department, Public Health, and our hosts. We really appreciate the opportunity. We've heard from pharmacies and pharmacists who wanted clear direction. On administering the latest seasonal COVID vaccine to individuals under the age of 65. In the process of crafting this guidance, we met with representatives of major pharmacies like Walgreens, CVS, and Walmart, as well as the independent pharmacies and the chain drugstores. Their absence of CDC scheduling or instructions for the latest seasonal COVID vaccine.
All right, so you're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Right there, happening live is in Hartford, Connecticut, as Connecticut's governor, also other leaders talk about vaccine access to residents, signing executive action so residents in Connecticut have access to vaccines. Vaccines have been a hot topic across the country as of late. We want to take a step away. We want to take a quick break, 2-minute break. We'll be back in 2 minutes again here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Welcome back here on WCNC Plus Live Impact News. Thank you for staying with us. Thank you for hanging with us. We want to get now to a press conference. I believe it just wrapped up, but we want to, as we always do here on Live Impact News, or at least we try to do, is try to make sure you watch it in its entirety from the very beginning so you're not missing anything. And that press conference is revolving around the school shooting that happened in Evergreen, Colorado, in the Denver, Colorado area yesterday. Multiple law enforcement sources have identified the student suspected of shooting 2 students and himself on Wednesday at Evergreen High School. Again, this is in the Denver, Colorado area. Are we ready for that? Okay, let's send it to that press, continue to that press conference right now.
One was shot outside, one was shot inside. Is that correct?
That is correct. One victim shot inside, one victim shot outside.
And I know you're not a doctor. Can you speak at all about what kind of injuries, like location of gunshots? Can you speak at all to the number of shots these kids took?
I don't know that. I'm hoping we need to let these families, the victim families, just adjust to what they're dealing with today. So we're really trying to be protective of our victims right now. By not giving out too much information. So maybe tomorrow in the days that come.
A follow-up to the SRO question, and forgive me if you've already answered this, but should have an SRO been there? I know you said they left to do something. It sounds like it was okay for them to do that.
Sure.
But was that SRO following department policy, school policy, when they left the campus?
Yes. The SRO that was sharing responsibility of Evergreen High School is allowed to come and go. He can go to lunch. He might have to handle something in the parking lot, and he might be cover on something that's happening in the neighborhood or up in the Evergreen area, a cover car for that. So no, he did not do anything wrong.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
What happened when law enforcement did make contact with the shooter? You said they got to him in about 5 minutes.
Right.
What happened?
Could have even been less than that. That's just kind of an estimate. I'd like to tell you more about that, but I need to get permission to do that. It's a lot, but I'd love to be able to tell you that story. Maybe I can do that later. Okay?
Any idea how long the school will be closed?
Not going to read. The Evergreen High School will not be open this week. It's a guesstimate. Maybe next week. We have a lot of work to do, and probably a few things that they'd like to do aesthetically to make that just a more healthy environment for the kids and the teachers. So I just don't know.
Was there body-worn camera video that will show at some point the officer's encounter with the shooter?
Yes. I don't know that it will be released right now. I know that it won't be released right now. How about that?
Yes.
But I do think that there's absolutely, there's body cam footage just showing more specific detail about the encounter.
And I know that you said that you can't say much about that encounter, but can you tell us if there were commands or was there a conversation of some kind that took place between that officer and the shooter?
I've got to get some better clearance and permission to do that. I understand that that's something you'd really like to have, so I'll see if I can get clearance for it.
Once again, for clarification, for if anybody wants to go pick up their car, to be at Bergen Meadows?
Bergen Meadows Elementary. You got to have a key. If the key that you need for your car is in your locker, we're not letting anyone in. But if you have a key, and we want one person, the driver, we'll bus him to the school because that area is completely cleared now.
When you say there are things to maybe do with the school aesthetically to make students feel better, can you describe what that is?
That would be broken windows, lockers that have sustained gunshots. I think that we have fluids that need to be cleaned up, some of that kind of thing.
So it sounds like there were students and teachers hiding in locked areas as
No
the
question.
shooter was going through.
No question. I can't praise the staff and the students enough for doing what they learned to do, whether it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, or it was something they learned at their first day of class here. They did the right thing. They locked down, and I'm not judging anyone who fled, but lots and lots of kids and teachers locked down in those rooms, did what they were supposed to do, and we know that it saved lives. They're heroes, our teachers. Looking at a motive, but we don't have one yet.
Have you heard the stories about the neighbors who took in kids? What do you make of that? People opening doors saying, I'm in my basement.
That to me sounds like Evergreen. Evergreen is still a smaller community. They're a tight community. Man, they're going to take care of their kids. If they're home, they're taking them in. Yeah.
Jackie, do you believe the shooter was trying to carry out a mass shooting with all the ammunition he brought?
I have to believe when you bring a gun to school and you continue to fire and reload and fire and reload, that you are on a mission. And we are grateful that he was less successful, but we're devastated that he was successful at all.
Did you mention how many rounds of ammunition he had? How many?
No, I don't know the amount of ammunition. Quite a bit.
When the school opens, what's going to be the plan for SROs? Is there going to be a full-time one that will be hired immediately? Or what is the plan? Is it still going to be part-time?
Another great question. I have to believe that we're going to have additional resources here for the kids as long as we need to. There may be a plan for us to put somebody more permanently up there. We'll talk about it.
Well, for surrounding schools, do they have SROs?
Yeah.
Are they also?
It's shared. It's still a shared responsibility. Not every school has a full-time SRO.
Well, I guess just for those who are wondering at home that you've seen something like this happen, why is it not full-time? Is there an issue with funding? What is the issue why there isn't full-time SRO?
The only reason there wasn't a full-time here is because she's on light duty. So we were sharing responsibility at that school.
When you say light duty, what do you mean by light duty?
It's about as far as I can go with that.
Okay.
Can you talk about what kind of radicalization you experienced?
I don't know that. It was stated to us specifically that was radicalized through an extremist network, and clearly we take that very seriously. There's obviously a lot of work that has to go into looking at his phone, looking at his social media pages, searching his room, searching his backpack. There's just searching his locker. There's a lot of places to look that we hope will just give us better information as to what he was attempting to do and maybe the why. Sometimes we never find out why.
I mean, in the past we've talked, when talking about safety and cell phones and cell phone policies, we've talked a lot about you know, it's every parent's worst nightmare not to be able to get a hold of their kid in this type of emergency.
Yeah.
One of the reasons that we've heard, like from Jeff Pearson and some of the school resource officers, is we don't want kids on their cell phones when something like this happens to jam up the networks.
Sure.
What is the learning from that? Was there any problem with students and cell phones and families reuniting?
Not that I know of. You know, if you look way back into Columbine, a lot of kids didn't have phones back then. And the chaos that creates when you can't connect with your child. And we know that today, you're hard pressed to find a child who doesn't have a phone. And I know a lot of kids reached out to their parents, so there was immediate relief, but hearing your kid is okay isn't enough. You need to hold your child. So it was still working really hard to get them connected.
And Jackie, any words of encouragement, or I guess for those families who were there yesterday? We saw so many of them who were rightfully so torn, kids shaken as well.
We will do what we can as a community to heal from this. It really sucks that we're here again. We've had our fair share of school shootings in Jeffco. But we are going to do everything that we can to help these kids heal, to help the teachers and the parents get back to life, and a lot of that is just going to take time, but the resources are available, and we are encouraging everyone to use them.
Clarification point again, how would you characterize, so we're very clear, on the parents' involvement in this, families' involvement in this investigation? Are they under investigation themselves? Are they cooperative? I'll let you use your words. Where they fit into this storyline?
We are in contact. You're talking about the suspect's parents.
Family, parents, I assume is the right word here?
They have been cooperative.
Are they under investigation for any reason?
I think everything is on the table when it comes to looking at this investigation and where it leads us. And I think that they're aware of that as well. But we have not run into a roadblock with this family.
Were
It's
there
just
any
great
red
news.
flags along the way, like did any that you're aware of that the district might have heard from other students concerned about the shooter's behavior?
Not that I'm aware of. No warning to this. Not that I'm aware
How
of.
long until kids could be able to go and pick up their cars or be able to meet at Brigham Meadows Elementary School? What's the time?
11 to 4:45 today. They can do that right now. Head over there with your keys. We'll bus you here, escort you to your vehicle, and get you out of here. There'll be another push later on for the other side of the school, and then there'll also be the need to get these kids and these teachers back in the classroom to get their books, to get their cell phones, to get their purses, and all the stuff that got left behind as a result of the shooting. So there'll be an opportunity for us to get the school open for those that need to get in there to get their personal property.
When would that be?
Don't know. Could be this weekend, but we'll keep you posted.
What's your plan for the rest of the day? Do you anticipate more updates later?
I just have a whole bunch of new questions that you guys asked. So I'm going to go back and see if we can help shed light in that way. And if we can, I don't want to bring you all together to say nothing. So if we have something substantial, we're going to get back together and it will be here. All right? Thanks for your patience.
Thank you, Jen.
All right.
Thanks,
Take care.
Jackie.
You bet.
All right, so that is a press conference out of Evergreen, Colorado, as you may have already seen and heard about the school shooting there, where multiple law enforcement sources are now identifying the student suspected of shooting two students and himself yesterday at Evergreen High School. A tragic situation. That student suspected of shooting those students around 12:30 yesterday afternoon died of his of a self-inflicted injuries. That's according to the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office. And he has been identified as 16-year-old Desmond Holly. So again, that is a press conference updating us on the latest there. Let's take a quick break. We'll be back here on Live Impact News in just 2 minutes. Welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. Carlene is here. Jeb is here in studio. So we want to continue our coverage of the light rail stabbing here in Charlotte. It has gained a lot of national attention, with President Donald Trump saying he's actively looking in this case. This is what he said earlier this week. The president has already deployed the National Guard in D.C. There's talks about Chicago. And so we reached out to the White House, WCNC Charlotte. We reached out to the White House asking if Charlotte is under consideration for troops to come here to combat crime. This is what the White House told us. Quote, "We will not speculate or get ahead of the president on any policy decisions or announcements. The president clearly cares about ensuring cities across the entire country are safe, and he has supported tough on crime policies since day one." So we got a chance to verify when the National Guard can actually be deployed. We actually spoke with a couple of different sources, including Attorney Gary Monty. This is a full interview from our verified reporter, Megan Bragg, and Attorney Gary Monty. Let's take a listen in.
So a lot of concern on social media, basically surrounding this unfortunate stabbing. Some people saying, like, is the National Guard coming here? Now that we can't really answer that because that's, not something in our control, but kind of what is the process for the National Guard to come here? What is the National Guard allowed to do? That sort of thing. The law, what does it say?
Sure. So first, let's start with a little bit of a history lesson on the National Guard. People may be aware that the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution talks about militias, a well-regulated militia. Well, a militia is a term that used to be used for what is now considered to be the National Guard, the National Guard. So these are units that are deployed state by state, typically. They are typically under the power of the governor of each state who can call them up. They are military troops, that can be used under our law for some very specific and limited purposes. And there are times under our law where the governor has sort of what we'll call more or less control over their deployment, calling them out, that sort of thing. And then there are circumstances where the president of the United States can do the same thing. And so there are laws that date back to around the time of the Civil War. Folks can understand and appreciate and won't find controversial. There's a hurricane, there's an earthquake, and so there is a need to deploy troops to help everybody get things back together again and keep order. And they are there to supplement our domestic police force in that event, and all under a set of laws that sort of tightly control, what they're supposed to be doing.
I know that it's like Title 32, where it's like the state governor can ask for the National Guard, like you were saying, for hurricanes, flooding, that sort of thing.
Yes.
So let's talk about.
So we do have, I can get into some of the specific laws. So the one law is called posse comitatus, and this is a sort of Civil War era law that basically says that, I'll read it. It says, whoever, it's one sentence, which is kind of interesting, whoever, except in cases and under circumstances expressly authorized by the Constitution or Act of Congress, willfully uses any part of the Army or the Air Force as a posse comitatus or to otherwise execute the law, otherwise execute laws, shall be fined under this title, meaning the Posse Comitatus Act, or imprisoned not more than 2 years or both. So you can see it's pretty straightforward, and it calls for jail time if someone were to deploy the military in a way that they were not allowed. So there are express authorizations that Congress has passed over time. One is, for instance, it's 10 U.S. Code 12 406, which is the federal statutory law. And the title of this is National Guard in Federal Service. And what it says, whenever the United States is invaded or is in danger of invasion, or there's a rebellion, people might remember the Whiskey Rebellion from the George Washington days, or the president is unable to, with the regular forces, meaning our normal police operations, the U.S. Marshal Service, FBI, that sort of thing, can call into service members of the National Guard. So, and then typically the National Guard, as we were talking about earlier, is under the authority and direction of the governors of the state. But specific laws like this National Guard Federal Code allow for the president to call these folks in. It is not as specific on what types of orders the president could give under this act, but it is certainly within his power to call them in as he sees fit or she sees fit, to repel invasion, suppress a rebellion, to help the federal government execute its laws. And so certainly, there is that. Then there are also laws such as the Insurrection Act, people have heard of, and it is at 10 USC, which again is our federal code, from sections 331 to 335. And one of the key provisions of this is 332, which says that the president, the title of it is use of militia, so that gives you some idea how far back this goes, and armed forces to enforce federal authority. And it says that whenever the president considers that unlawful obstructions, combinations, or assemblages or rebellion against the authority of the United States make it impracticable to enforce the laws of the United States in any state, it goes on, may use military force, the armed forces, as he considers necessary to enforce those laws or to suppress the rebellion. So there are specific enactments from the Congress that allow the president, under the circumstances that are stated in these things, to call forth the National Guard. Now, there just haven't been a lot of instances where these laws have been interpreted and tested by our courts. As we sit here right now, there is a case from California, from what's called the Ninth Circuit, which is one step below. The country's divided up into federal circuits, and they each have an appellate court that is one step below the United States Supreme Court. So recently, with respect to the president's deployment of National Guard troops to Los Angeles, that was challenged. And Justice Breyer's brother, who is a federal district court judge, ruled that some uses of the military in the Los Angeles instance violated our law in terms of the deployment of troops on American soil. And that case right now, as I understand it, is making its way to the Ninth Circuit Appellate Court. And that'll give the Ninth Circuit, or potentially even the U.S. Supreme Court, the opportunity to make a decision about whether the president's use of force in that circumstance was lawful or not. And so there are some open questions about what that might mean. And while we're there on Los Angeles, the president invoked there the Section 12406, the one that I think you were referring to earlier, and gave them a mission under something that's been called the protective principle. So this is not, it's an inferred theory that the executive branch, not just President Trump, but other presidents as well, have adopted something called the protective principle. And what it is it's a way of interpreting the law that's on the books to say that if, for instance, you're blocking people's access to the federal courthouse, or you're doing something, there's a group of protesters or something that's preventing the U.S. Marshal Service from doing its job. This principle says that if what the president is doing is he's deploying troops, American military troops, to help the government enforce or enable our federal officers, judges, the courthouse, the federal courthouse, the Marshal Service, and so on, federal law enforcement officers, if you're deploying the military to help them, assist them in what they're doing, then that might be lawful. Well, that's not really been tested very much in our courts. And so it's an open question about whether that's a legal theory that will actually work or is lawful under the enactments of Congress and the other law that we have. And again, what I think a lot of Americans and even lawyers don't necessarily know until they go to law school, a lot of our law is not necessarily written down. When you see a lawyer sitting in front of these books that are often behind them, those books are full of cases that have been written by judges, appellate court judges typically, but also federal trial court judges and so on. And those are written opinions that either talk about and interpret the law or enforce the law, and lawyers and judges use those to say, well, in this instance, there's precedent of using the military to protect a courthouse, like in Los Angeles, let's say. And so it would use that law to support the idea that the president's use of the protective principle here was lawful. Another judge may find a case that would tend to say that it would not be lawful in the way that the president has used it. So presumably the district court, the trial court, would have evidence, meaning they would put people on the witness stand and have experts and that sort of thing. They would take evidence to see what had happened, and then the judge, then later the appellate courts, would look at that evidence and say, okay, these things happened out there. The government's justifications were X, Y, and Z. The opposition says that those were not appropriate uses of the military. And so was it appropriate to employ the troops? Is this protective principle theory something that we should say is lawful, adopt into law, or strengthen to the degree it's already on the books? And so this is basically how our law works in the United States. And it takes time. It doesn't happen immediately, and there's not always a question. And in the United States, we operate a lot on norms and traditions that are sort of embodied in the law, but not necessarily written into the law. And so we all know that things change over time. And so are we going to break with our traditions or not? It's often a big question. You'll hear lawyers and judges talk about the importance of precedents. And what that means, precedents, is that if we're just changing the law every 10 minutes, then really we don't have a law, because it's just changing. It's not something that people are going to accept because it just seems to be whatever some judge on a particular day says it's going to be. And if it works like that, then it will not work like that. And so there is a norm, a tradition in the United States of abiding by precedent. And so if we're going to change how things are done here, then there usually needs to be a very good reason for it. And so that's why it's such a big deal, and why our judges have such a large responsibility, because it includes things like the use of military troops, our own military troops, not somebody else's, in our states and on our streets and with respect to American citizens. And indeed, that is a big deal. And in this, another aspect of this that's come up is where you've got governors, let's say it didn't happen, I don't think, from North Carolina, but let's say the governor of North Carolina would call forward the National Guard and then have them sent to another state. Let's just say to South Carolina. And so you'd have North Carolina National Guard in South Carolina performing duties there. And so you can understand that.
And you can catch this full conversation and this story on the National Guard deploying and the guidelines surrounding that on our digital platforms. We want to shift away from that, and we want to head now to Greensboro, North Carolina. We're happening right now. A memorial service is being held to honor the life and legacy of Major General Joseph McNeil. McNeil, a member of name is, growing up in the High Point, Greensboro area, the name has been interchangeable. I've heard Greensboro 4 and T4 to represent the university, but those 4 young men helped ignite the civil rights movement, sit-in movement, when they sat at the segregated Woolworths lunch counter in Greensboro on February 1st, 1960. Major General McNeil passed away last week. Again, here is the service that's being held to honor McNeil. Let's take a listen in.
Recall what brought us here to this special place, and how this special place has called forth the best in all of us. And most importantly, how this place has helped us understand that we have the capacity to change the world around us, even as young people, especially as young people, how we have the capacity to change and be better versions of ourselves if we simply have the faith and courage to follow our convictions, as so many have before. Aggies like the Reverend Jesse Jackson, America's first major black presidential candidate, like Judge Henry Fry, the first black Chief Justice of the North Carolina Supreme Court, like Alexander Ralston, the first black woman to practice law in North Carolina and the state's first elected black judge, like Janice Bryant Howard, the first African-American woman to build and lead a billion-dollar company. And like Major General Joseph A. McNeil Sr., the catalyst for a sit-in protest that would not only change lunch counter policies across the South, but that would spur the passage of the 1964 U.S. Civil Rights Act, bringing justice to Americans, American communities, from Raleigh to Rochester, from Charlotte to Chicago, from Wilmington, all the way out to Washington State, across this great nation. We walk a path of freedom and liberation and truth, cleared by Joseph McNeil and his 3 brothers in arms. And it is, of course, the passing of General McNeil that brings us together today in this moment of respect and reverence. He left this earth just 1 week ago today, but his presence is still with us, as I expect it will be for years, many generations to come. You know, Shakespeare once wrote, "Some are born great, some achieve greatness, and some have greatness thrust upon them." I do believe General McNeil experienced greatness in all 3 ways. As a young man born in the Deep South during some of the most tumultuous moments of the Jim Crow era, he might have grown up embittered and cynical. Instead, he believed in the possibility of a different kind of future. He believed in a possibility of liberty. As a teenager experiencing discrimination and bigotry on a daily basis, he might have thrown up his hands in frustration and despair. Instead, he chose to believe that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens that were young people, teenagers, they could change the world. And once that small group led by him did exactly that, he might have chosen a quiet life, content to have made his mark. Instead, he chose to serve his country so that liberty might be extended to all others and that they might breathe freely. That, in essence, is the story of Joseph McNeil. So I'm blessed to have met and spent time with him earlier this year at the 65th celebration of the February 1 sit-in. It was cold that day. General McNeil could have stayed home. In fact, many thought he would, as he faced significant health challenges at the time. But he was never one to take the easy way out. He never moved in the direction that fear or discomfort dictated. And so when the day came and nearly 1,000 of us were gathered in the Alumni Event Center, there he was, moving with some assistance and grace, but he was sitting straight, as only a military officer would, with his attention riveted on the proceedings, still focused and in charge. Students, community members, and media around the room stretched their necks to get a glimpse of this man, this living legend. And we all later on braved the winter weather at the February 1 monument to lay a wreath and remember the other members of the four who had already passed, David Richmond and Franklin McCain. But he was right there with his eyes focused intently on the ceremony. No one would have blamed him had he remained at the Alumni Center, but duty called, and he always answered to duty. He never shirked away from that. In the photos from that morning, you can tell he didn't mind the cold at all. In fact, in several of them, he looks ready to stand up and lead the crowd once again in the mile walk to Woolworths, 65 years prior. So our time together was brief that morning, but he left an enormous impression, as only a great person can. Now, he wasn't a giant man in terms of his physical stature. He was about my height, quiet, unassuming, serious, focused. It's almost impossible to look at him based on physical stature and not wonder at the courage he mustered 65 years ago at the age of 17 and the vow he made then that the indignity of everyday life that Black Americans faced at the time would not go unchallenged on his watch, not on his watch. Joseph McNeil stood up so that we all could sit down. He spoke up so the rest of us might not suffer in silence. And most importantly, he called upon this great nation to live up to its most prized ideals, ideals of equality, ideals of liberty, and ideals of freedom. And he kept calling until America answered. So on behalf of Aggies everywhere, I extend my deepest sympathies to the McNeil family and to the many others who knew Joseph McNeil better and longer than I did. You know, the great Maya Angelou just once said, "A great soul serves everyone all the time. Great souls never die. They bring us together again and again." He was a great soul. And as we celebrate his life today, a life extraordinarily well lived, I look forward to February 1, 2026, when he, David Richmond, Franklin McCain, Jabril Kazan will bring us all together once again. The light he leaves behind will shine on our paths for generations to come. God bless and Godspeed.
Good afternoon. This is truly the day that the Lord has made, and I am honored to have a moment to celebrate Major General McNeil, who I had the honor of meeting my freshman year at North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University, and was honored to meet and see him every year and his family. And every celebration that he showed up and stood for what he believed in and inspired all of the students here to do the same. So I am honored to represent all of our amazing alumni across this world. Proclamation honoring the life and legacy of Major General Joseph A. McNeil. Whereas Major General Joseph Alfred McNeil, born on March 25, 1942, in Wilmington, North Carolina, dedicated his life to courage, service, and justice. And whereas, as a 17-year-old freshman at North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University, he stood with fellow classmates Franklin McCain, David Richmond, Jabril Kazan, then Ezell Blair Jr., to launch the historic Greensboro sit-in on February 1, 1960, at the Woolworth's lunch counter, an act of peaceful protest that ignited a nationwide movement and laid the foundation for the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And whereas Major General McNeil graduated from North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University in 1963, proudly joining the ranks of its distinguished alumni, and remained a lifelong example of the essence of Aggie pride in service to his alma mater. And whereas, following his time at North Carolina A&T, he distinguished himself through nearly 4 decades of military service in the United States Air Force, rising to the rank of Major General and upholding the highest ideals of duty, honor, and country with unwavering integrity and renowned service. And whereas his legacy lives on through the February 1 monument at North Carolina A&T in the Dudley Circle, within his hometown of Wilmington, where Major General Joseph McNeil Way honors his name, and in the countless lives influenced by his example of integrity and perseverance. And whereas, even in his later years, Major General McNeil continued to honor his alma mater, returning in February 2025 to mark the 65th anniversary of the sit-in movement, where he received a standing ovation for his lifelong commitment to justice and service. And whereas the people of this community, this state, this nation, and our world owe a profound debt of gratitude to Major General McNeil for his leadership, sacrifice, and vision of a more just and equitable society. Now, therefore, be it resolved that we, the Office of Alumni Relations, and the more than 80,000 alumni across this world do hereby honor and celebrate the life and legacy and everlasting contributions of Major General Joseph Alfred McNeil Sr., recognizing him as a proud alumnus of North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University, a trailblazer of civil rights, a distinguished military leader, a standard bearer of moral fortitude whose example will continue to inspire generations to come. Let this proclamation stand as a lasting tribute to his memory and enduring reminder of his extraordinary impact on our university, our state, our nation, and our world, this 11th day of September 2025. A copy of this proclamation will be presented to the family, and a copy will be given to the North Carolina A&T Archives Department in Bluford Library. In honor of how we do in Aggie Land, I would ask all alumni to please stand, because in Aggie Land, we achieve great goals in everything and produce renowned individuals dedicated to excellence. Let's give one Aggie pride for Major General McNeil. Aggie pride. Thank you.
Thank you. As we move along in the program, we will have some family
tributes, and this is the time when we get personal, amen, with the life that was well lived and shared with us. And so we will ask that the members of the family will come in this order: Major General Mitch Mitchell, Joseph McNeil Jr., Franklin McCain Jr., David Richmond Jr., and Jabril Kazan has sent a statement that will be read by Terrence Muhammad. Please come in that order.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. To Ina, Alan, Jackie, and Frank, and Joe Jr. I thank you so very much for allowing me this opportunity to speak and to recognize the contributions that General Joe McNeil made to my life and to our country. A man whose courage changed the course of American history and whose dedication to service exemplified the highest ideals of our nation. It is often debated as to whether leaders are born or made. Regardless of the answer or your opinion, I think we can all agree that General Joe McNeil was a leader, and an outstanding leader at that. His leadership was on full display on February 1st, 1960, when this North Carolina A&T student, along with his 3 comrades and Aggies, marched right into the Woolworth store to the lunch counter and sat down, and that counter was no longer segregated. This pivotal act of courage predated what Congressman John Lewis would later call good trouble. Joe's act of defiance was not reckless rebellion, it was principled leadership, for he understood that progress requires someone willing to stand up, speak out, take action, and accept a certain level of risk when others remain silent. That same moral courage and commitment to doing what was right defined every chapter of his remarkable life. It is often assumed that one who rebels against the injustice of societal norms is not patriotic, or that they don't love their country. Certainly, this assumption was not true in the case of Joe McNeil. For in 1963, with our country embroiled in a war in Southeast Asia, a time when some who are in the highest positions of government today were avoiding military service, the defiant Joe McNeil that had endured being spat on, jeered, threatened, pushed and shoved at the Woolworth lunch counter, was accepting his commission as a second lieutenant in our United States Air Force. Joe and I share many commonalities, significant in my opinion. Among them are that we were both commissioned through ROTC at historically black colleges and universities. He here, of course, at North Carolina A&T, and I at South Carolina State University. Both Joe and I maintained dual careers throughout our professional lives. He with the FAA and the Air Force, I with my airline and the Air Force. A lifestyle that meant lots of time away from our families. Military leave time away from our employers. Numerous military activations. Missed the Little League games, birthdays, anniversaries, and occasions when we arrived home late in the evening after our children went to sleep and departed in the morning before they woke up. It was indeed my privilege to have been present for General McNeil's retirement from the Air Force in 2000, and to have again at that time see Ina, and to have met Jackie and other members of the family. It was my profound honor to have General McNeil come out of retirement to serve as the presiding officer at two of my most significant moments of my own military career. When I was promoted to Brigadier General, Joe was there to administer the oath and welcome me into the general ranks. His presence that day represented not just protocol, but a bridge between generations of military leaders, from a pioneer who helped to change America to those who would carry the torch forward. Years later, when I reached the end of my own military journey, General McNeil again stood with me as he presided as the presiding officer at my retirement ceremony. Having him there to close that chapter of my service was both an honor and a reminder of the continuity of service that binds our military family together across decades and generations. Joe McNeil's legacy reminds us that true leadership is not about position or rank. It is about courage, integrity, and the willingness to stand up for what is right, even when it's difficult. Whether sitting at the lunch counter in 1960 or pinning on General stars decades later, he exemplified the truth that one person acting with conviction and courage can indeed change the world. Thank you.
Hello, my relatives. Chante washte nape chuzapalo. Chante is my heart. Nape is my hand. Nache chuzapalo as I greet you with a hearty handshake. My mother is Hunkpapa Lakota, and my father is African American from Wilmington, North Carolina. And all of my uncles are here. And my aunts and my cousins are here. And the family that we share with A&T, you are my relatives in my father's way, in his life, and his legacy. And I'm going to read to you the obituary of my father. Last week ago, as it was said, and as the general had just spoken, our fathers would leave early in the morning to take their flights on the weekends, often in their jumpsuits or their flight suits. And so last Thursday, after hearing from my mother the night before, from myself, my sister, and my brother Frank, we told them that we're going to be okay, that you did everything you needed to do, that you can leave us, because we knew our relatives were calling to him because he was watching in the ceiling and he was looking at them because they were looking at him. But he was holding on to hear from Ina May. It's okay, my husband, you can leave now. We're going to be okay. And I would watch my mother say those words to him. It moved a mountain in her heart to do so.
Yeah.
Because those two, nearly 60 years of marriage, of standing side by side, of standing side by side, fighting that civil rights fight, wherever they were. And they met in South Dakota, in Rapid City, at a civil rights action for housing discrimination, where they posed as a married couple. They practiced a little bit, I think. And they gained a respect for one another. And my father won over my mother's relatives when she was away on a speaking engagement and came back. And here she found out that something was already working in his favor. Because the relatives were already convinced that this young captain in the Air Force Reserves wanted to work this out, with my mother. And I came along a few years later. I'm very happy for that, and then my brother Frank. But my sister Jackie was 7 years old when I came along, and she was 5 years old when my father came along. And she was the real test of my father. Jealous because my mother's love for my sister was all hers. And then he came along and tested that. So those two have a very special relationship. And my sister told me a lot about that, and I was very happy to hear it. Because these are the things that bind the family together. Bringing in different parts of our world that we live with, and it sometimes seems that we may contend with. I guess I'm not reading the obituary anymore. But these are the things that are the challenges of our lives today, or the challenges of our lives yesterday, or the challenges for our grandparents and the parents before them, and centuries ago, when people were forced to, made to, be together to share, or forced to be living on a land and find life, find happiness, find a way to survive, to strive, to make our families continue to the next generation. What I'm hearing on this stage just reminds me that though we pray to Tunkashila, our grandfather God, and we live with Unchimaka, our grandmother Earth, we are here in the middle. And we are fortunate to be in this world at this time. Although it seems like it's great tumult, it seemed like that 40 years ago to my father, and 40 years before that to my grandmothers, who raised him to be the way he is, who told him at a young age, you're going to learn, and this is the tools you need to learn. My grandma Pansy, Edna Harris, taught him that at a very young age. And she was a teacher at Williston High School. And my brother Frank and I had the fortune to stay with her on the weekends when we were kids. And that same diligence was there for us that was there for my father. But made him into the person that he was to seek the justice that he found. That's right. And continue to work for. As we all know, you just don't have it, and it's there. It has to continue. Now we're here today, and you wonderful opportunity to learn in the same hallowed land, the same hallowed halls that my father and those learned at, because now we are the tools to seek that justice. We are the tools to make this family, our family, your family, the family yet to come. We must make this heaven on earth. We must not wait until we pass on to find that heaven. We must make this family and this heaven on earth. My father worked hard, very hard. We didn't see a lot of him. And when we did, he was kind to us. Because my brother and I were energetic. Let me put it that way. We were energetic. I came home and found the house that he had built and the yard that he had in pieces sometimes because we were busy people, my brother and I. And he loved us, and he loved my sister and my older brothers. And we all worked hard. My brother Ron passed away this past April. And he learned from my father, even though they seemed to butt heads, he learned from my father what it was to be a leader. And he made a college at Standing Rock in North Dakota for his people, for our people, the Lakota people. And he became the chair. And he asked me to help. So I became a councilman, and now I'm working on projects for our people. But these are the lessons that we watch, and we learn from our parents and our grandparents. So don't take it for granted in this life. While we have our relatives, please speak to them, say hi to them, love them, have coffee, have lunch, have dinner, serve them. Serve them because they served you. And you will serve your children and their grandchildren, and they must learn to respect that and to serve you as well. Because the seasons come and go rather quickly now. We must take this time as we have it today to recognize, like you're doing, and I thank you very much for the honor you bestow on my father. But we must honor ourselves and each other daily. Wopilatanka, with great gratitude. Haumitakiyase, to my relatives and all the relatives that we live with in this earth, those that crawl, those that swim, those that fly, those that grow, those that just be. It's not just us that live here, but we share the spirit in this great, wonderful universe that is our planet, and we must teach that to our children. It's not just us as human beings. We are a part of this world. Our spirit and our Nagi begged to be here at this time, and this is a pivotal time. Don't be afraid.
That's right.
Lean in, Dad would say, and get to work. Thank you.
Joe just was a little short of telling you that he was just flat out bad. So good afternoon. I am Frank McCain Jr., and I'm representing the entire McCain family as we recognize our brother, uncle, and friend, the late Joseph Alfred McNeil Sr. I stand here today with a full heart, one filled with both sadness and gratitude. Sadness because we're laying to rest a giant of a man. Gratitude because I had the privilege of knowing him not only as a historic figure, but as Uncle Joe, a close friend and family member whose love and example touched our lives deeply. On February 1st, 1960, there were four: Blair, McCain, McNeil, and Richmond. Four teenage boys, ordinary college students who did something extraordinary. They walked into Woolworth's and sat down at a lunch counter where they were told they did not belong. My father, the late Franklin McCain Sr., was one of them. Joseph McNeil was another, and alongside Ezell Blair Jr. and David Richmond, they changed the course of history. There were four young men, each unique in personality, background, and dreams, but united in courage, conviction, and brotherhood. If you knew them beyond the headlines, you would know that they were not one-dimensional heroes. They laughed, they studied, they argued, and they played a lot of practical jokes. They were sons, brothers, husbands, fathers, and friends. They were determined and driven men who lived full lives beyond February 1st. Uncle Joe was a man of strength and discipline. His military career reflected his deep love of country, even when that country did not love him back. He carried himself with humility, but also with the unshakable belief that he and all of us deserve dignity and respect. For my family, Joe McNeil was not just an historic foursome. He was part of our extended family. He stood by my father in life, and now they stand together again in eternity. I am certain that Uncle Joe, Uncle Hoppergrass, and Daddy are united in heaven, laughing, reminiscing, and perhaps even planning another bold stand or sit-in from heaven. Lord knows we need it too. 2025 is starting to look a whole lot like 1960, if you ask me. As I further reflect on the life of Uncle Joe, I am reminded that he was part of a courageous foursome whose legacy lives on. The sit-in movement was not just a period of time or just their moment of time, but rather our call to action. It should still be our charge for today. It calls us to be vocal when silence is easier. It calls us to promote unity when division is tempting. And it calls us to stand up, to sit down, to speak up, and even shout from the mountaintop against any form of discrimination or inequality that surrounds us. So, Uncle Joe, your work on earth is done, but your legacy lives on in all of us. We thank you. We honor you. We love you, and we thank God for you. Your legacy will never fade. Today, because of you, many of us are able to walk a little taller, sit a little freer, and live with a little more hope. May God bless and keep you, Uncle Joe. Rest well in the company of your brothers. Amen.
I thank each and every one of you here to honor Joseph McNeil. I'm here representing David Richmond Jr., my dad. With deep humility, I am so proud of Joseph McNeil, who has been a part of my life for some 60 years that I can remember. It took me till I became 18 years old and listened to my dad in the back of a classroom at Wake Forest University to truly understand what these gentlemen did. And as I reflected that day, I was like, wow, could I have ever done that myself? I'm like, no, I couldn't have. And I was so proud of him when he said that. Joe has been like a father figure to me when my dad passed away, as he was one of the first ones to leave this earth of the fearsome four. 40 toes down, they walked through Woolworths and sat down. And they sat there because of the convictions of their parents, that they saw injustices. And I'm so proud of what they have done to give me hope in life. God rest his soul. He has been an inspiration to me. He's like a coach. Every time I would see him, his words are very reflective and inspirational. It's so many words to describe a man like this. Joe was a general. He wore many hats and wore them well. I'll be here all day telling you about all the great things that I felt about this man. And I'm so proud of the...
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to cut away from this. My name's Colin Mayfield here on WCNC Plus inside the Impact News studio. We've had a number of breaking developments over the last couple of hours since obviously Charlie Kirk's death. No ties that we know of so far, but there have been multiple reports on HBCU campuses across America of threats, and it's shutting down some campuses and other places. The evacuation orders are in place. In fact, we have WVEC's Brianna Fallon on scene right now, standing in the rainforest. Brianna, thank you so much for being out in the rainforest. I'll do this real quickly, but what have you heard from the police chief? It sounds like you just spoke to him. What did he say?
Yeah, we spoke to him about a little over an hour ago, so they couldn't get too much into detail. We're still not sure what the exact threat is. They wouldn't go into detail about that, but they did mention how they're working with several state, local, and federal law enforcement agencies to just kind of come together and figure out what exactly this threat means, and just to keep all the students and faculty safe on campus, really.
All right, that's good to hear. Do we know anything about the actual threat that was made? Did they or did the chief say in relation to that? Was it specific in nature? Was there weapons or anything talked about in terms of a bomb used? Do we know any details like that yet?
So no, we do not know any details about that. All that the chief mentioned was that this was a credible threat. It was deemed credible, but there were no details as to what this threat exactly was. But they are definitely taking it seriously. I mean, we were on the campus and there are no students, pretty much. It's practically a ghost town out there. And they did have several security checkpoints out on the road kind of leading into the campus earlier this morning for only essential personnel to get through.
Really quickly, Brianna, did they say how long they maybe think this could go on, or how long the campus could be under this type of situation, this incident type of watch? What do we know about that?
Yeah, so right now they said campus is closed today and tomorrow. They are meeting again today at 4. The spokesperson let me know to kind of reassess and figure out what their next steps are going to be.
Awesome. Brianna Fallon on scene for us there in the Virginia area on Hampton University's campus, reporting on credible threats being made to HBCUs across America. Brianna, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you. All right, we're going to continue our stream here on WCNC Plus. We've been covering the latest for you, obviously going back to this, I do believe, a live shot of this ceremony, obviously commemorating what happened here in North Carolina with the 4 individuals from A&T University. Let's go to this now and go back to the remarks being made.
Brill's sister Sheila Blair Chang and cousin Ula May, they are also here. I want to recognize them. Also on behalf of Jabril's wife Lorraine, Alethea, his daughter, Camille, his other daughter, Hosanna, his son, and Ava Marie, his granddaughter, they offer their deepest condolences to the McNeil family. Although they are not able to be here in person, they are internally grateful to the McNeil family for sharing Major General Joseph McNeil with them. They consider him to be part of the family as brother, uncle, grandfather, and are overwhelmingly thankful for all of his sacrifices in making this a better world. Now, for the shortest speech or words ever spoken by Jabril Kazan in the recorded history, if you know him very well. It took us days to get it, but it is the shortest speech that you will ever get from Jabril Kazan. His words. I met Joe McNeil when we were freshmen at A&T College. He invited me to be his roommate when I needed dorm space. He was a dedicated and brilliant scholar. His studies were his first priority. But I will always remember the times we had fellow students engage in discussions in our room about various topics, including civil rights. At a young age, Joe became a strong and dedicated leader. His place in history is well earned. I love you, my brother, Major General Joseph McNeil. As we said on that fateful day, February 1, 1960, God sent us. God surely bless all of us with you, my eternal brother. Peace and blessings be upon you always, Dr. Jabril Kazan. Thank you.
Amen, amen. We are so thankful today, and I'm honored that the family would ask us to come and share, didn't have to, in this eulogy. I was supposed to be at Yale today, but I broke ranks, and then we had to drive 16 hours. Got caught up in some issues out there to get here. And our world is in trouble today. It's been in trouble. But we saw brutal murder, for which we all should denounce. We can debate, but we ought not kill our debaters. And this is the remembrance of September 11th. And there are families today who are remembering people that they woke up in the morning and did not see them anymore. And so I want to ask you if you allow my wife to come and read a scripture. And I want to share with you, and then post that we will have the other tributes and then a special video tribute. I'm going to, as I said to the family, because of that 16-hour drive, if you would mind me, I'm not as young as I used to be. Bones don't work the same way. But I want to step out so that I can rest and be able to run on Gladys and Joyce and Lewis. So, Reverend Dr. Della, would you come and just lift this scripture for me, please?
From the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 5. Now when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on the mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them. He said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." The word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God.
Joseph McNeil and others sat down and taught us. Jesus sat down and taught them. Jesus, with all of his power and all of his wisdom and all of his love and all of his authority, Reverend McClain began his public ministry with his disciples by sitting down. He sat down and taught them. That is not only a tradition of Jesus, but in the Lakota tradition and in the Native American tradition, the wisest among the people, when the Great Spirit is speaking to them, in the Native tradition, they sit down. He was in a time of Roman authority and oppression when the Caesars came in to issue their oppressive laws. Caesar would sit down. When his client state rulers like King Herod decreed their ideology of greed and power, they would sit down and rule from the throne. But in an act of nonviolent defiance, Jesus took their posture, but not their principles. He sat down and taught the people, for he had come from sitting down at the right hand of God and would return to sit down at the right hand of God. When Jesus sat down, it wasn't a lazy sit. It wasn't an apathetic sit. It wasn't a disconnected or disconcerted sit. It wasn't even a scared sitting. He sat down in power. He sat down with intention. And he used it for the good and the cause of justice and to teach an entirely different ethic, entirely different politics, the politics of God. Not in the temple, not in a political house of power, but in the street, on the side of a mountain. Jesus sat down to teach in public what it really meant to hunger and thirst after righteousness, to be poor in spirit. He knew, Jesus knew, having a crowd like this in Rome and teaching them to do things contrary to the authoritarian regime's decree was dangerous. But anyway, he sat down and taught them. Brother leader, Major General Joseph McNeil, preachers, sat down and taught the whole world. On February 1st, 1960, he and 3 classmates went on to Woolworths to confront the power and the lies and the injustices of Jim Crow South. Every seat that was filled at that counter reinforced the picture and the purpose of segregation. Every seat that was filled when they got there was an object lesson in the politics of division. Just 5 years earlier, when Joseph McNeil was in his formative adolescent years, Rosa Parks had sat down in a seat and refused to move, which sparked a 381-day boycott that led to the Supreme Court ruling that segregation in public accommodations was unconstitutional. But 5 years later, in the South, businesses and local leaders continued to defy the court. 5 years later, they insisted on the legality of division. 5 years later, the movement, the civil rights movement's energy was dying and divided. The movement had lost its energy. And then 4 students who stayed in the same dormitory began to plan how they would sit down and teach a whole nation how to stand up. They could have stood at the back window outside and been treated like second-class humans, one step removed from slavery, and got their food. They could have stood and gotten their food served with the spoiled ingredients of racism and indignity. They could have stood and nobody would have thought bad of them because it was the practical thing to do. They could have stood and went on and passed the test of A&T University but failed the test in the call of history. Some on this campus did not celebrate them in the leadership of that day. Chancellors were worried about their students. Chancellors might speak today in favor of them, but that was not how it was then. Students on campuses, even HBCUs, that dared to stand up were considered rabble-rousers, even by their institution. He sat down. And his sitting was a major act of moral and spiritual protest. For 4 young men to sit because the weight of history and the hand of God pushed them down in those seats. It was a miraculous act. Had to be miraculous when the ketchup, the mustard, the salt, and the pepper in their eyes came. And they sat anyhow like good soldiers in the army of justice. Before you say nonviolence was weak and brag about how you wouldn't have done this or that, think about what they did under the real threat of death. They miraculously sat there and inspired others to sit while people spit and the soda and the hot coffee when dumped on them along with the insults and invectives. I didn't fully understand what your father and others had done, the miraculous nature of it, until I went to the Civil Rights Museum, actually in Atlanta, and there they have headphones you can put on, and the volume and the sound of what they would have heard is slowly piped into your ears. And the purpose of it is to see how long you could take it. Most people don't get very far because the sound is devilish. It is deafening. It is disorienting. And yet they sat there. Miraculously, God gave them the courage, the composure, and the commitment.
All right, guys, we're going to take a quick 2-minute break. We'll be back right on the other side of this. Stick with us. All right, we are back, everyone, here on WCNC Plus. It is just about to be the weekend, obviously Thursday, Friday Junior, so we are looking forward to the weekend. It seems to be nearly 85 degrees outside, a little bit warm by some people's standards, but we'll squeeze all the heat that we can out of the rest of what we have left, because once it is cold, folks will want it to be warm again. So let's go to the update for our weekend forecast, the team of meteorologists on our Impact Weather team.
Good Thursday. I'm meteorologist Becca Birdsall, and it was another cool, crisp start to the day. Many of us woke up into the 50s, even a lower to middle 40s up towards the high country. But that 59 degrees you saw here in Charlotte, that actually marked the 5th consecutive day where we've had these low temperatures in the 50s, below 60 degrees to be exact. And we'll remain in that range in the upper 50s to lower 60s as we go towards this upcoming weekend as well. Our stat of the day, well, our average low for now is 64 degrees, and that average low will continue to drop about 1 degree every 2 to 3 days. This will continue all the way through about October 17th. Weather impacts today, temperatures will be a little bit more seasonal, back to near average, close to about 84 degrees. You still won't need that umbrella, just the sunglasses for this afternoon, with temperatures really starting to warm up for the second half of the weekend. Yesterday, we had a high temperature of 82 degrees with a morning low of 56. Today will be just a little bit a touch warmer with those high temperatures, mainly in the middle 80s for today, with dry conditions and lots of sunshine to go around. We do have that surface high pressure system keeping things quiet here, which is why we'll continue to see those warming temperatures, lower to middle 80s across the greater Charlotte area and lower 70s for the high country. Those dew points starting to rise just a hair, mainly into the lower to middle 60s, so not necessarily uncomfortable, but not as comfortable as it has been over this past week. We will continue to to see cooler, drier air as we end out the work week. Part of the reason why is we're in a blocking pattern in the upper levels of the atmosphere. So it's called an omega block. You can actually see that Greek omega shape in the jet stream. And right now it's driving in those northerly winds, some of that cooler, drier air across the Carolinas. But where you see that high pressure system, that's actually where the heat is really cranking up, especially between Oklahoma and Texas. High temperatures over there, lower to middle 90s. We will start to feel a little bit of that heat going into the second half of the weekend with a gradual warming trend. Lots of sunshine to go around, but for your Saturday, middle 80s, start to creep up to around 86, which is above average. The mix of sunshine and clouds to go around. That warming trend will continue into your Monday. Highs breaking into the upper 80s, even a few locations brushing 90, especially in our most southern counties. A cold front will be coming through. That will knock temperatures back down into the lower 80s between Tuesday and Wednesday before another big warm up as we end out the work week. Of course, September is a transition month, so this up and down temperature trend will only continue as we go further in the month. Rain chances slim to none from now into Monday. Like I mentioned, next cold front starts to come through. We'll reintroduce those rain chances, only about an isolated chance as we go into that work week. Checking in on the tropics, of course, we are at the peak of hurricane season, and the National Hurricane Center is watching this tropical wave coming off the coast of Africa that now has about a 30% chance of tropical cyclone development as it continues to push westward in the open, warm waters of the Atlantic. Something to watch as we go into the next 7 days, but the system's still over 3,000 miles away from the United States. So as we continue to monitor this, keep up to date with the forecast. But of course, this is peak of hurricane season. This is typically when we see less wind shear. Instability levels will also continue to increase through late September. And of course, we've got some warm ocean waters over there as well. Closer to home, temperatures tonight dropping down into the upper 50s to lower 60s in this Jerry Hunt Supercenter 7-day forecast. For your Friday, we'll be kick-starting this weekend off with gorgeous weather, lots of sun, highs lower to middle 80s. Again, that warming trend really cranking up for your Sunday and Monday, highs middle to upper 80s. Cold front will come through on Tuesday and Wednesday.
All right, guys, we're going to give you a quick live shot here of the U.S. Coast Guard pulling up to the dock here. This is in Racine, Wisconsin, which is kind of a suburb of both Milwaukee and Chicago, kind of smack dab in the middle. But apparently there was a small plane crash that went into Lake Michigan, 12 miles off the coast of Racine. So Lake Michigan, quite a big lake, one of the biggest in the chain of lakes up there. And in fact, apparently this Sirius SR-22, it's a smaller aircraft, I believe it's a prop engine plane, I guess took off from Mitchell International Airport. That was around 12:17 p.m. Central Time, so just after 1 o'clock here Eastern. And apparently, like I said, 3 people were recovered from the crash. That's according to the U.S. Coast Guard. So we don't know right now their condition at this point, but a miracle. I guess they were to recover these individuals, albeit I don't know, obviously, their condition. Just putting some positivity out there. I would hope that they're okay. But again, the U.S. Coast Guard, and there was a Traverse City helicopter, Traverse City, Michigan, right across the lake. A quick buzz, probably less than 40 minutes. If you're going to fly across the lake, they helped out in that situation. So yeah, we don't know too much other than the U.S. Coast Guard was on scene. Seems to be things are dialing down, I would assume. But again, this was 12 miles off the coast, so quite a distance from where they needed to be to where they are now. So we'll continue to monitor this situation. And I do believe we are going to go back to the ongoing comments here on the 4 NC A&T University students who obviously was a precursor of the civil rights movement in a lot of ways, what they did in their sit-in during the civil rights movement. So we'll go to this now.
But W.E.B. Du Bois and Alan Locke came through the universe as well.
Yes.
And Alan Locke raised overall awareness of the potential of black equality. He said that no longer would blacks allow themselves to adjust or comply with unreasonable white requests. This idea was based on self-confidence and political awareness. Although in the past, the laws regarding equality had been ignored without consequences by white America, Locke's philosophical idea, and he wrote about it in The New Negro that your father was versed in when he read it, allowed for fair treatment because this was an an idea and not a law. People held its power. And if people wanted it to be, this idea to be, to flourish, they were the ones who would need to enforce it through their actions and overall point of view. In other words, Alan Locke said, just because the country passes a law doesn't mean it'll be enforced. The people must enforce it. I must dare the nation to be true to what she has written down on paper. He was reading the New Negro. Can you imagine that? New Negro and physics and engineering and Gandhi in one hand. One hand. But McNeil sat down also and taught us how to love a nation even when you know it must be made better. Brother McNeil became a general in the Air Force. He committed his life to this oath. Listen to this oath. I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Just stop right there. You can understand some folk have not kept their oath, even today. That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I will obey the orders of the President of the United States and the orders of the officers appointed over me. Listen now, not according to the regulations of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which actually has inside of it how you cannot obey those orders if they don't line up with the Constitution. With the Constitution. Defend the what was he willing to defend? The establishment of justice, providing for the common defense, promoting the general welfare, ensuring domestic tranquility and equal protection under the law. He did not swear to defend an authoritarian president. He did not swear to defend Jim Crow just because that was a part of America. He said, I will defend the United States Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Now, some might see this as a contradiction, but black men who fought in the Civil War handled and held this contradiction. My dad, who served in World War II and watched German soldiers be put on in the front of the train, while he, as a Navy man, black, was sat in the back. He handled the Constitution. I don't like, America, what you're doing, but I'm not willing to give up on you because too much blood of mine and my ancestors have gone into building this nation. It's not a contradiction, and even if it is, we have to hold contradictions all the time. Nelson Johnson had to hold that contradiction as an Air Force man and a gospel preacher. Medgar Evers had to hold that contradiction as a man in the Army and as a civil rights leader. As one writer said, how I feel about my country and how my country feels about me. McNeil, he lived with the struggle of how he felt about this country, how this country felt about him. He had arguments with this country, but he was not an anarchist. And I want to say that to us today because the spirit of anarchy is loose in this country right now. It's loose in this world. It is one thing to have an argument with your country. It's another thing to be an anarchist. It's one thing to have debate with your country. It's another thing to want to kill the debaters that you disagree with. Oh my God, and if you go sink to that low, then you've lost the whole battle because you've lost your humanity, trying to fight for humanity. He was steadfast, McNeil was, about defending and demanding that his country live up to we the people of the United States in order to form a more perfect union. He knew that the writers of the Constitution admitted their flaw in the very first sentence, more perfect which means they knew even if they didn't say it, it was imperfect and broken. But that wasn't all that was possible. Brother McNeil sat down because he believed what Langston Hughes had written in 1935 during the Harlem Renaissance. The free? Who said the free? Not me. Surely not me. The millions on relief today, the millions shot down where we strike, the millions who have nothing for our pay, for all the dreams we've dreamed and all the songs we've sung and all the hopes we've held and all the flags we've hung, the millions who have nothing for our pay except the dream that's almost dead today. Oh, let America be America again. The land that never has been and yet must be. The land where every man is free. The land that's mine, the poor man, the Indians, the Negroes, me. Who made America? Whose sweat and blood, whose pain, faith and pain, and whose hand at the foundry, whose plow in the rain. We must bring back our mighty dream again. Sure, call me any ugly name you choose. The steel of freedom does not stain from those who live like leeches on the people's lives. We must take back our land again. America, oh yes, I say it plain. America was never America to me, and yet I swear this oath that America will be out of the wreck and the ruin of our gangster death, the rape and the rot and the graft and stealth and lies. We the people must redeem the land, the mines, the plains, the rivers, the mountains, and the endless plains, all the stretch of these great green states, and make America again. McNeil taught us how to hold the contradiction and fight for the dream everywhere, every day. And finally, the other day, talking to his son and family, Brother McNeil taught us how there comes a time to sit down and rest. When he sat for all of us, he wasn't resting, he was standing. But there comes a time for those who serve to sit down and study war no more and rest. Reverend J.M. Gates, one of the early black men who recorded sermons, wrote a little song for times like these. He said, sit down, servants, and rest a little while. I know you're tired, but sit down, servant, and rest a little while. Your soul is so happy because you did what you were called to do. Now sit down, servant. Hey, God, and rest a little while. Troubles are now over. Troubles are now over. Sit down, servant, and rest a little while. The other day, the voice of eternity spoke to Joseph and said, sit down, servant, and rest a little while. And if we are really going to testify about how we honor Brother McNeil and how we honor all the others, maybe we need to sit down, but not to rest, but to raise a challenge to the things that are going on. Maybe we need to sit down and take some heroic acts to change history. Maybe to honor those who caused change by sitting down, who caused us to stand up by sitting down. We need the courage of love and the love for justice to sit down now. Every senator's office that voted for that big, bad, ugly bill, why don't we go in their office and sit down? Why don't we sit down and demand nonviolence rather than all this violence in the world? Sit down in the street until every ICE raid is stopped and our Latino brothers and sisters and other immigrants can be safe. Sit down! Sit down with the workers that don't get a living wage and have a national strike until every worker gets a living wage. Sit down. Sit down in Congress until we have the nation, called the nation, to stop spending more money on war than it does on HBCUs and education and health care. Sit down. Maybe every Jew and every Muslim And every Christian, we need to hold hands and sit down until genocide and ethnic cleansing ceases in Gaza, ceases in Yemen, ceases in Congo, ceases in the Sudan. Maybe we need to sit down until folk stop messing with our voting rights and trying to take voting precincts off of A&T's campus. Somebody ought to sit down so we can stand up. And if we sit down right, one day we shall wear a crown. One day we shall wear a crown. One day, we.
All right, folks, not exactly sure if we have the rights to play this song, so we want to make sure we are safe rather than sorry. We're going to take a quick 2-minute break, come back on the other side. All right, folks, we are back. I was just talking to Jeb about this. We've had some huge interviews lately on Irina Zarutska, on the Charlie Kirk murder just last night, a special for more than 2 hours fielded by Vanessa Rufus, by Jeb Goldman here. So don't forget to look at WCNC Plus. Tell your friends and family to download that as well, because at any point, any day, we know that breaking news happens and we bring you straight to that scene. And in fact, just this week, we had an interview with North Carolina State Auditor, the Auditor's Office, talking about their investigation into Charlotte City Council's closed-door payout for CMPD Chief Johnny Jennings. This was a discussion fielded with Nick Sturdivant and Nate Morabito, our investigative reporter. We'll go to this now.
We want to continue the story and continue to talk about this, a big story that's not only dominated the headlines here locally, but across the country. That's that fatal stabbing on the light rail, the Blue Line here in Charlotte. So yesterday here on Live Impact News, we got a statement from the state's auditor's office, basically saying they're investigating Charlotte Area Transit System, also known as CATS. We got that statement in, and we also have State Auditor Dave Bullock in studio with us. We also have lead investigator Nate Morabito in as well. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Let's start here. So we got the statement about investigating into cats. My first question for you, why now, and why was it important to go into this investigation, do this investigation?
Well, good question. The why is for the service workers and folks who use cats every single day. It's for the college students at UNC Charlotte who use that system every day. And it's on behalf of the Charlotte Panthers fans who in 2 weeks are going to be on that system going to a football game. And that's why we're doing it. From the state auditor's perspective, since taking office in January, I have worked and our team has worked to repurpose the state auditor's office to really affect everyday North Carolinians and answer questions across the state on accountability, effectiveness, and efficiency and program results that come from the use of public dollars, and look at it from a perspective of how does it affect everyday North Carolinians. This is an issue with the Charlotte area transit system that has been bubbling to the surface. This is not the first high-profile incident of violence on the system in the last several months. I mean, we had 2 veterans recently assaulted on the CAT system, and now the tragic murder on the CAT system. So it would seem natural, at least to me, that this would be an area that the state auditor's office would want to look into, particularly if you look at it from the perspective of the fact that the city has engaged contractual services to provide security for cats. So that'll be top of the list for us, is to take a look at that contract and what type of return on investment the city of Charlotte is getting.
Well, you mentioned those previous 2 incidents. One would ask, why not sooner? Because you mentioned those 2 incidents, but we've also covered violence on cats in the past. So why not sooner? Why now?
Well, I think, and that's a good question. Over the last 3 weeks, there's been additional information now that has come to the forefront, because we don't enter into investigations or audits lightly. And over the last 3 weeks, since the murder on the cats, there's been additional information that's come to light. For example, questioning the policy decisions with respect to having private security as opposed to Charlotte Mecklenburg police officers on duty, the armed or unarmed status of that security, as well as exactly how much money is being spent with respect to security on the system, and the percentage of the entire budget that is being spent on security. So as those additional pieces of information rise to the top, it gives our office more of a basis to engage.
I was going to point out that in 2023, we reported that the city of Charlotte was going to change its security contract. Basically go from one private security to 2 separate ones. One would be unarmed, one would be armed, and almost doubling essentially the security budget for cats over the next several years. So there were these efforts to take a vote to change this, and now we're in this situation. So what kind of authority do you have, and what kind of inklings do you have early on that maybe the policies might not be met, or maybe the money isn't being spent as efficiently as it could be? Is there something there initially beyond the fact that there was a total lapse across the board that left this innocent woman dead?
Well, first, on a top line, from November of last year, only 37% of respondents to a survey from the city of Charlotte felt safe on cats. That's a top line number that I think is really important. Secondly, to answer your question about authority, the state auditor's office has plenary authority to look at all aspects of any public funded operation. That includes looking at contracts with private companies. So we'll have access and be able to look at all the communications and contractual language and dollars, cents, invoices, policies, procedures, everything within the confines of that contract with that private entity, we have plenary authority to investigate, and we're going to use the full authority of our office to complete that investigation.
I got to ask, we got a statement today from U.S. Department of Transportation. FTA is also launching their own investigation. So how does this investigation from the State Auditor's Office look different from that investigation?
Yeah. It's going to look, I'm sure there'll be some overlap.
Yeah.
I mean, if there's multiple agencies looking into it.
And how do you guys work together on that?
Well, I mean, from a first blush, and I saw that release as well from the U.S. Department of Transportation, we'll certainly be getting the same information that the U.S. Department of Transportation gets in response to their request. But we'll be able to take a granular look at budget line items, and then take a real look backwards at exactly where not only Charlotte Area Transit System is going, but we can take a look back. Where has CATS been? What decisions have been made in the past? What has informed those decisions? And then we'll be able to compare that moving forward into the present system, present situation, and ask that question, using retrospective data to get a real answer of where CATS is and where CATS may need to move in the future.
How cooperative has the city been? I mean, who do you reach out to? Do you reach out to the city manager, Marcus Jones, and let them know you're doing this? What has been the initial response from the city?
Yeah, the city's cooperative. I mean, they really don't have any choice but to be cooperative with the State Auditor's Office, but they have been cooperative. They were cooperative in our investigation of the behind closed doors settlement with Chief Jennings, and we'll be releasing, by the way, our final report on that this week. But they were cooperative, and we got all the information that we requested from the city. So in terms of cooperation, our office, at least since I've been in office, has observed no problems with respect to getting the information and data that we need.
I'll give you some examples of some things that I've requested, and I'm sure they are looking at something similar too. But even as something as simple as just the ridership leading up to this murder and after. Is there more fear now? Is that actually translating into fewer riders? The contracts, the penalties, if there were any, the certain contract language that could trigger other things and other actions. Tell us more about what you expect to find. Is there something that you feel like you will eventually get to that shows a major lapse at CATS, or are you casting a wide net?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think it's important, and one of the things that we've tried to do at the Auditor's Office, at least since I took office first of the year, is to be data-driven on everything that we do. It's really important that you don't just spitball these audits. They've got to be based on data. For example, the audit we completed just recently on the Department of Motor Vehicles, 600 pages, laden with data. Every recommendation that we made in that audit is based on data and interviews and in-person information that we've taken, and the use of experts as well. So the State Auditor's Office, in order to maintain credibility, needs to base its final results, and our team does that, on data. And we're using new modern computer systems to aggregate that data and sift through data. The key is going to be able to contextualize the numbers. So doesn't do really anybody any good or give you any real information if all you do is spit out numbers. You can be able to take those numbers and, to your point, make a contextual analysis of those numbers. So our view will be a wide net on CATS. It will be focused on primarily the return on investment, particularly on the security contract, and we'll be asking the questions of, number one, are people safe on the CATS system? And if they're not, what needs to be done to make them safe?
Do we have a timeline of when you guys will complete, the State Auditor's Office will complete this investigation?
It's a good question, and it's a hard question to ask because, again, we want the data to drive the ultimate report. report. So it'll depend on the amount of data and where our investigation goes. Because if we just look at a contract and just look at the results of what that contract says, the amount of money spent, what the metrics are, the data that is kept by CATS on the utilization of the contract, that in and of itself doesn't take a whole lot of time. But if we ask that broader question with respect to, as you said, ridership, what does that look like? What does an increase or decrease in ridership look like based on certain news stories? And we will take into account public opinion and public interviews as we fan out and talk to people who are affected daily by the CAT system, whether they're users or whether they're in recipients. For example, UNC Charlotte, major recipient of the use of the CAT system. It'll take some time. So I'm hesitant to put a timeline on it because we also don't want to release a half-baked report. We want it to be laden with data and backed up by data. What I can promise the people of Charlotte is that we will be back and we will deliver a report.
Go ahead, Nate.
Yeah, I mean, something else that I look at, and I've got to imagine you're doing the same thing, what were the staffing projections for each security company? How many actual staff were working, not just that night, but on all these other nights where things happen? And I want to point out, Strategic Security Corp, that's the armed guard company that the city contracted with, and Professional Security Services, the unarmed. So are you all reaching out to those contractors too?
Yes.
And hoping to get some explanations of what their staffing's like, what kind of resources they have?
Well, we're going to get the answers to that question, and that is within the authority of the state auditor's office. When it comes to private corporations, if you do business with the state of North Carolina or with the metropolitan Oregon city government, you are subject to audit by the state auditor, particularly if you have a contract with that agency. So with respect to that, we will get to the bottom of all those particular questions. Those are on my board, those questions. You and I think a lot alike.
Well, I always respect auditors because they like to dig just like I do.
I respect reporters because I used to be one. I'm a graduate of UNC Chapel Hill, and I was a newspaper reporter when I first graduated.
We all have important jobs to do, and really it's all about kind of making sure there are no cracks in the system, and if they are, we're exposing them and coming up with solutions. I know some people were critical, going just back to the chief investigation for a minute, that this was political. We have a Democratic mayor here, we have a Republican auditor, this was political. What you kind of started out by saying was we're trying to look at things practically now that affect everyday life. This clearly has been a ripple across the state and across this country. What would you say to people that say, well, this is another instance of a Republican targeting a Democratic city and trying to uncover something that may or may not be there? We know what the end result was, and it was horrible in this case. What would you say to people that say they're looking for something to criticize the Democrats about?
Well, first of all, I haven't brought up politics in this at all. And secondly, I would say Charlotte's 14th largest metropolitan area in the nation. It is part of the state of North Carolina. If the state auditor is really going to do the job of being state auditor, I think the people of Charlotte expect the state auditor to keep tabs on the city of Charlotte and to hold the government of the city of Charlotte accountable, regardless of the nature of the politics of the city. And so that was my commitment when I ran for office, and that's the commitment that I am attempting to hold up on behalf of the people of North Carolina. So we've been in other cities. We just released one of our first investigations of a small town, the town of Mount Olive, where we found, for example, not a lot of money for the city of Charlotte, but for the city of Mount Olive, a $211,000 misappropriation of dollars in their water department. That's a big deal to the town of Mount Olive, right? And the local district attorney has taken our report and is taking a look at whether they're going to institute criminal charges in that case. You know, we took a look at the Winston-Salem Forsyth County school system, which has for the best of my knowledge, and quite frankly, I didn't even look, a mixed sort of political arrangement in terms of who's on that school board and who's on that county commissioner, and we did a fairly in-depth and critical analysis of that school system. You know, the interesting thing about it is, and I tell folks this, the state auditor actually takes 3 oaths of office. Every other elected official across the state of North Carolina takes 2. The 2 standard oaths are a constitutional oath of office and a statutory oath of office. So you take your oath to uphold the Constitution, not only the United States Constitution, but the state Constitution. And you also take an oath of office to uphold your statutory duties. The state auditor takes that 3rd oath of office, which is to complete his or her job in a nonpartisan fashion. I took that oath of office, and that's the commitment that I have and that our team has with respect to every audit and every investigation that we complete.
This is clearly like layered, this whole situation, right? It involves the city and public transportation, it involves the court system, etc., right? It involves mental health. Will there be other agencies you look at as part of this too? Well, you know I look at conviction rates. I'm looking into that right now for the DA's office in Mecklenburg County. That's kind of connected in some way, right? Will you look at magistrates and judges? The AOC, the Administrative Office of the Courts, is that under your authority? Will this just be the city of Charlotte eventually? I guess that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to acknowledge that there have been a lot of questions about the magistrates and the judicial system here in Charlotte with respect to this particular incident. And oftentimes it takes an incident like this to reveal that as an issue that needs to be looked at. So I don't want to say that we won't look at that because it certainly is an issue that deserves attention. Our primary focus right now, though, is going to be on the CAT system because I think that's where our office can have the most effect and where we can get some real results because we can scope our investigation to get results that really matter. For example, it's not necessarily just the security. We need to look, for example, at fare hopping. Right, that was an articulated issue at the city council level about folks that jump the gate and get in without a fare. And I believe the individual who's charged in this case did not have a ticket. So this fare hopping is something that we need to take a look at as part of our audit. You know, it's important for our office to take a look at things with the respect of where can we actually get a result. So if we cast our net too narrow, we don't get a meaningful result. But if we, on the other hand, cast it too wide, we don't get enough information to provide a meaningful report. So our team looked at it over the last several days, last week or so, and decided that this CATS audit would be the right approach where we could actually get people some real results.
Is there any, I guess, opposite of that question, is there any collaboration in this investigation with any other agencies?
Well, again, it depends on where our investigation leads and where the data leads us.
Okay.
A lot of times you'll have, even in the case of the city of Charlotte, you'll have internal auditors that have certain reports. Those reports, if they're available, we'll get that and take a look at it because there's no need for our team to necessarily reinvent the wheel if there's already a collection of data. So we'll look at internal audit reports. We'll also look at any other type of agencies that may have investigated or done reports on the CAT system. For example, Department of Transportation, any information that not only the State Department of Transportation may have, but the Federal Department of Transportation. We'll take a look at their information and data. And then, you know, what's really important and what we did, for example, with the DMV audit is to actually interview and talk to the people that work on the front lines and who operate the CAT system. Bus drivers, for example. Those are the kinds of individuals that we need to interview and talk to because a lot of times they'll be the most insightful with respect to how things actually work where the rubber meets the road, so to speak.
Are you?
I didn't intend that pun, but
are you
I was going to point it out.
Based on what you've learned so far and your communications with potentially other state officials, are you privy to information that the public isn't aware of yet about this case that would be revealed